Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Market Open. We are live Monday, May 11th, back from Chicago. We're here back in the studio. Hopefully everyone had a great weekend. We have so much to talk about, so much to get into as we start off the second week of May. At least for the global capital equity markets. Monday, I did not do the market close, and oh my, what a close it was, particularly if you owned Rocket Lab. We will talk about that. That was was doing a boat tour in Chicago, and well, on that boat, I think this is the first time I've owned a stock ever that went up 35% in a day. I don't think I've ever had a stock that went up 35% in a day. Just absolutely crazy. 104.81 in the pre-market. Rocket Lab 105.47 on Friday. Micron continues to go green. That's up 4%. SanDisk up about 0.5%. We will talk about some of these other AI infrastructure names getting a bid. Your software names are down outside of some of the ones that had good earnings. Your NVIDIAs are down today. Your ServiceNows are up a little bit today. SPY down about 0.21. Intel crossing 130 in the pre-market. It was actually at 135. We will talk about all the other different headlines that we've got going on and how that's impacting the broader S&P, the broader markets, the semiconductor ecosystem. Can this cycle continue? Got some macro stats to look at. Overall, this week should not be that crazy in regards to earnings. We do have HIMSS and ASTS today. So those two are big ones. So definitely we'll be paying attention to those. We had a couple in the morning that we'll talk about in the pre-market. I know HIMSS and ASTS are very, very large retail followed stocks. So we will talk about that today on the close. But throughout the week, we have Oklo, we have Nebius. I know that's a big one. Novik, Cisco. So it's going to be a Ondas, but it's going to be a relatively light week for like really, really big earnings, even though we do have some important earnings. And so after this week, next week, we have NVIDIA, and then we kind of cap off the Q1 earnings cycle, and we'll see how the market gets ready for June and July. So a lot to talk about, a lot to get into. Thank you all for being here. Before I get into it, just want to give a shout out to everyone who was at Chicago. It was, once again, I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about it because after I've done these meetups, I've usually spent 20, 30 minutes going into it. But at this point, I would just be saying the same thing that I said at all those other meetups. It's a very, very special feeling to see people in person. It's part of the reason why we do the meetups in the first place. It's it's one thing to talk to people through a screen and see people's comments and DMs and messages. Another thing to like shake someone's hands, give them a hug, and just actually get to know who they are as a human and understand their story, understand why they get any value from the show and the brand and what we built over the past couple of years and how we can make it better. A lot of times I'm usually asking questions on like what can make it better. By the way, the number one request again is turn off that damn bell. So I don't know what to tell you guys. Every time you're like, do the bell. There's like people in person that tell me, Amit, I can't handle the bell. There's a few of you that said you love the bell, but there's plenty more that said, I love you, Amit, but I can't do the bell. So it is what it is. But yeah, it was very fun. It was an amazing time. Got to meet a lot of people. The other cool thing about doing these things in different locations is you get to see people from different geographies. We had a bunch of people from Tennessee, a bunch of people from Atlanta, a couple of people from California, a lot of people from the suburbs of Chicago, but a ton of people from Milwaukee and Wisconsin that drove down. So that was really special, just getting to know all these different groups of people that are out there. And if you ever ask me what the time is, I can give you a more accurate description now because my guy Daniel made a currently right now watch, which is crazy. I'll take this off and show you guys later, but it's just a bunch of nows. That's just incredible. Benjamin, shout out to him. Asso rocks. I've been talking about wanting like a Richard Mille style watch, and there you go. He got me one. I'll link his. He actually runs a watch website. I'll link it later, but there you go. It's just amazing, amazing stuff. People with incredible stories and very thoughtful stories of just how they've interacted with the content. And so many of you, I mean, the number one piece of feedback I got is just so many people are with me throughout the entire day. I met a lot of people that actually stay from the morning to the close, like literally those 6-7 hours in the day, just staying with me on the stream, even if I'm in the background or something. And that's a really, that's a really big responsibility for me. It means a lot. And I appreciate so much people spending the time to actually care. Kevin Duffy, he was there. I signed his bell, which was crazy. He gave me a bell to sign and I got to sign his bell. I mean, it was just super cool. Also, shout out to Trinity and Elliot because these two girls have to listen to the show every day since their parents listen to the show every day, the mom and the dad, and you've got a really amazing mom and dad. So I appreciate you, Trinity and Elliot, for letting me into your home and listening to me while you're on the way to school and listening to me while your mom and dad's making some breakfast. And hopefully you get to enjoy every day as we talk about the stock market and finance. And you two are going to be a couple young billionaires as you're getting to know so early in your life about the stock market. So shout out to you guys. Really appreciate everyone who's been just keeping up with the channel and hearing these stories about these two little girls who have to listen to me every morning and they go crazy when the bell rings, and they enjoy it. Like it's just it's the reason I started doing this. So very, very special. Very, 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 very special. Defin, been in the chat for 5 years. Finally got to meet him. Amazing guy. OG Pouncher. Juju. Hopefully she's there in the chat. She was just an incredible human being. Very, very emotional story. I mean, some of this stuff truly is emotional, and you kind of just sit back and, hold yourself from tears when you're listening to some of these stories because everyone's life is so different. Everyone's been through their own stress, their own trauma, their own shit. They have their own things that they deal with. But for all of us to be together in that moment, it's because we're connecting over one thing that we all care about, which is investing. And, so few of us have that community to be able to invest. So it meant a lot. Chels, she was amazing. She got me a candle, which was incredible. I think she's doing a vlog on this whole event. So you guys will be able to go to her channel later if you're not following her and get to see what the meetups are like based on her vlog in it. So I appreciate her taking the time to vlog it. But she got me a candle and I use like one candle a week at this point. So I will be burning out of that candle pretty soon. But it was just really great to connect with a lot of people and deeply appreciate everyone who was here. All right, so let's get started. Got a lot to talk about, a lot to get into. And let's start off with what's going on with Iran and Trump. So yesterday was kind of weird because one of the main things that happened with Iran on Friday is that they were getting ready to send their counterproposal. And this counterproposal was essentially rooted in what they would have to say to Trump's proposal, which is to officially end the war. Trump ended up reading the proposal that he got yesterday night. And this will kind of segue into some of the companies that are affected today. I've just read the response from Iran's so-called representatives. I don't like it. Totally unacceptable. Thank you for your attention to this matter. He then had another longer note late last night, and he basically went off and said that everything that Iran has been doing is ridiculous. So he ended it by saying that for 47 years, the Iranians have been tapping us along, keeping us waiting, killing our people with their roadside bombs, destroying protests, and recently wiping out 42,000 innocent, unarmed protesters and laughing at our now great again country. They will be laughing no longer, basically making the case that all of these deals that they've signed with Obama over the past couple of years and all these different peace treaties we've had with them have never really resulted in anything material. Now, is he being a bit hyperbolic here to be able to get Iran to actually give us a good deal? Maybe. But I also think there's a world in which he's kind of pissed off about the deal that we are getting. And so that, I think, starts off the week in terms of, are people going to dump stocks at 9:30 based on the idea that we don't have a deal with Iran? Are people going to say, this is stupid, I'm going to buy the dip because we inevitably will have a deal with Iran? And it doesn't even matter that Trump is like acting like we're not going to get a deal, because at the end of the day, he does not want to go back to bombing civilian infrastructure for energy, given oil prices have come down substantially. Now, the problem is we're up today, 97.85. We were at 94 on Friday. We were at 105 on Tuesday. We came down to 90. So it's been going back and forth, which is why it's kind of hard, once again, for a lot of the bears, particularly on oil, to get grips with the equity prices that we're seeing, with oil being this high and inflation potentially coming back. But Trump also is emboldened, as we talked about last week, that equity prices continue to go up in the face of oil going up. So he kind of thinks, I think he has more time to navigate the situation and not be as aggressive with capitulating or trying to get Iran to come to the table. Carson, was great seeing you as well. Carson has been an OG of the channel for a long time. I really appreciated meeting you and your girlfriend, and so I'm happy you came. And yeah, Carson, it was super fun. Drake album this weekend, baby. I am so excited for this Drake. I am staying up late Thursday to finally listen to this Drake album. Hopefully it's out at 12 a.m. Friday morning. So I know you'll be up getting ready to listen to the album as well. So thank you for coming to the meetup. It was super awesome. So that was the update on Iran. I mean, the pre-market futures are not really that affected by it. I mean, the S&P is red. So at this point, I guess you could say if the S&P is red, given it barely goes red anymore, at least over the past month, that is an impact. But 0.19%, I would say, it's kind of nothing. We ended at an all-time high yesterday, not yesterday, on Friday at 737.62. I think the earnings picture, once again, becomes more important than just the
the Iran news, but nonetheless, if we do get a sell-off today, the VIX spikes, I don't think anyone should be too surprised, because it's probably a response of Trump feeling a little annoyed at the Iranian response to this new deal that they're trying to get. Okay, cool. So let's talk about some of the stocks that are up, and then we'll keep going from there. Micron, this one continues to defy reality, up 5.4%. But then again, is it defying reality if it only trades at this point 12 times earnings? They got another price target increase to 1,000 from Deutsche Bank. Over the last 2 weeks, we hosted investor meetings in Europe with Micron's VP of Investor Relations. Technologically, the value of memory has never been higher, with all layers of the memory hierarchy proving to be critical enablers of performance inputs for AI processors and model output. Demand for these AI outputs continues to be growing at an extraordinary pace, with falling cost per token driving greater incentive to expand usage on the core as well as the edge. So the same story from some of these investment banks coming to the realization, as Micron is approaching $1,000, that they should increase the price target to 1,000, that we are in a supply-demand imbalance when it comes to memory, and memory once again continues to be the core bottleneck. If you take a look at this chart right here, these are prices in Korea of DRAM, flash memory, and SSD. It's all going up and to the right. And between April and May, which is this final part of the chart right here, you can see DRAM up 18%. Flash memory up 47%. SSD export unit prices by kilogram per weight up 140%. I mean, the prices are up dramatically, which is obviously why, given the prices, are going up, you're seeing the momentum in the context of the memory stocks. Now, Danielle says Micron always has the lowest PE when the cycle ends. That is a fair point, because usually low PE is a sign of late cycle, because people are getting ready to recognize that inevitably the cycle is coming to an end. People can also argue that a high PE is actually when the cycle comes to an end, but usually the boom and bust doesn't give it a chance to get a massively high PE, because people are smart enough to know that at the end of the day, it's a commodity. Having said that, maybe this time is different. And I hate to be the one to say it, but if this price action doesn't show that maybe this time is different, then I don't know what does. Now, granted, this price action might be playing into the fact that it's not different, and you're supposed to get these euphoric pieces or these euphoric bursts of moves on the stock price to prove that it's actually not different, because eventually it all comes crashing down. But look, my kind of takeaway on this is, at this point, if you miss the memory trade, you miss the memory trade. It is what it is. And I don't think you have to FOMO into some of the memory stocks. We talked about this with Stock Talk, talked about this with Jason. There are a lot of other opportunities that are out there. And once again, I said I was working on this over the past 2 weeks. I'm going to be open sourcing an entire database of different names that I think not necessarily have potential, but that are involved in the AI space. And then there's a few of them that I'm going to highlight that I do think have potential, that haven't run as much, but have run. So, interesting fact as I'm finishing up this database, I tried every model to show me names that fit into the broader ecosystem for AI and the broader ecosystem for data centers, construction, building, all this stuff that hasn't run 30% this year. And none of the models could find it. They kept showing me like Broadcom or Micron. I'm like, guys, like GPT, Gemini, no, these are up way more than 30%. So it told me the models really suck at using year to date as a filtration mechanism. Like, they're just not that good at it. But B, at some point, Claude came back to me and it was like, Amit, all these names are up 30%. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because if you want to buy any of these names, which I'll just give you guys one, I'm going to highlight around 15 names in this database that I think are relatively interesting, even if they haven't gone super parabolic like Micron. But Corning is one of them. I spent a lot of time last night trying to understand more about Corning in particular. And I think I have a better grasp on fiber versus optics. And we'll talk more about it in terms of why this is so important, and why CPO is becoming so relevant, why Goldman Sachs put out this whole note on photonics, like what the real math behind and quite frankly, the physics behind these prices going up are. Corning's going to be relevant for a long time. They're just going to matter more and more and more as hyperscaler demand continues to exist. Same argument you can apply to Micron for all the people saying that we are late cycle, given the level of demand, supply, and balance we have and the level of AI compute that we need. I mean, again, for those that are heavy users of AI, when you get token limited, it's also partly because we don't have enough compute. We also need to increase the context windows for all these LLMs and the inference training that we're going to do. More CPUs means more agents and CPUs means we need more memory. Like, there's so many ways to make the argument that the broader AI narrative is not slowing down. Now, does that mean you buy something like a Micron that just keeps going up and up and up? Maybe, because if it's not slowing down, then Micron trading at 15 times earnings with a $100 share price gets you $1,500, or sorry, $100 EPS earnings per share gets you $1,500, and then boom, you've got a almost, what would that be, $2 trillion company. And that's a double from here, which would be nice, right? 750 to 1500, that's a double. It's just the risk you're taking on, which again, might not be that level of risk if you're super convicted in the memory thesis, but it might be a lot of risk in the context of how the chart is going up. That's where you have to make your own decision. But I do think there are a lot of other opportunities that are out there, and a lot of other opportunities that are smaller that have not run like crazy. So if people feel they completely miss the AI build out super cycle, I think that's just flat wrong. I just don't think that's the case, because if you assume, and here's why this is not the case. You cannot justify Micron being worth $800 billion now, $780 billion at the moment, if you think the AI build out is over, or if you think the cycle has already happened. Like, it just doesn't make sense. $850 billion. Sorry. Why would Micron be worth $850 billion if the cycle is over right now? Unless you're calling a top, which is fine, that that you can have a disagreement with the bulls on that. But if the cycle is continuing to go, then there's all these other different layers to the cycle that are incredibly important. They haven't run like a Micron because they probably don't have the pricing power like a Micron, but they are incredibly important companies. Akamai is another one that Jason and I have been talking about over the past couple of days, along with Fastly. I mean, there's just a lot of different layers to the stack. Obviously, the neo clouds are the most important layer that people have found out when it comes to deploying compute. We will talk about IREN because, once again, they are engaging in dilution, which the street doesn't like. That stock's down 9%. We'll talk about that in a second. But there's also all these energy plays that are continuing to become bottlenecks. So the broader thesis, I think, right now in this market is your stock will run if it is part of the broader CapEx that the hyperscalers are spending, if you believe the hyperscalers are not going to stop spending CapEx, and the deployment of compute is almost becoming a national security issue, because quite frankly, if it's 50% of our GDP and, to keep the country secure, we need a good economy. Like, we need to keep engaging in this capital expenditure cycle. And there's a lot of names, a lot of stories that are not slowing down anytime soon. So I think that database will hopefully be very helpful, show a lot of different ideas here, but it also highlights, why a Micron is running, why a Qualcomm is up 8.6%. If you believe in the future of all these new devices that will have chips on them in and of itself and, provide inference on the edge, there's all these different layers that are incredibly important. It's why Marvell has run over the past couple of weeks, and it doesn't seem like that story is any soon. Yeah, Pure Storage, that's another one, or Everpure, I should say. This stock up 8.3%. We'll talk about this one as well. But we talked about this last week with two people, Jason and Stock Talk. And you're starting to see a lot more of these companies that are optimizing the levels of the stack, whether it's from token generation, data centers, the physical components of building HVACs. There's just so many names that are out there. A lot of names that people know, but a lot of names that people don't know. And I think in this database, hopefully it will bring to light some of those different names. And then the question is just trying to find the best names that are out there. Let's talk about IREN real quick. So dilution. This dilution is actually kind of weird. Not only do they have the 6 billion dilution that they have, I did see Trump talking about Dell, which we'll talk about in a second as well. But they filed 2 billion of senior convertible notes. So not only was it the 6 billion ATM, which they did 1 billion of that at 43, that was disclosed, I think, on Friday after hours. So the one out of the 6 billion has already been used on 43 at $43. Also, we have the Cerebras IPO, which we'll talk about, because honestly, I think that IPO is going to be kind of crazy and probably for a good reason. So we'll talk about that. But now they filed for 2 billion of convertible notes that convert in 2032. So, I mean, look, once again, this company continues to prove that they are not nebulous. As good as the NVIDIA deal was, we talked about the bear case of the deal. The bear case is that NVIDIA is not actually investing. They're forcing NVIDIA, or they're forcing IREN to prove that they can actually deploy GPUs at scale and get a lot of other hyperscaler agreements to then buy their shares at $70. I do think eventually IREN will be over $70. NVIDIA saying that they want to buy those shares at a $70 conversion price probably means that they think the company should be worth that much if they're able to execute. But that's a big if right now. And IREN continues to dilute at scale without putting up these massive deals that a Nebius or a CoreWeave is doing. So it continues, in my opinion, to be one of the lower quality neoclouds. Bought it at 40, so kind of don't really care here at 55. If it goes all the way back to 40, then it is what it is. But at this point, they got to shut up or put up. And I understand they have to dilute to be able to get the capacity and the power to be able to get these deals, but they already have a lot of capacity and power, and they're not signing new deals. And every time they're asked about it, they just say we're in discussions. Whereas, Nebius and CoreWeave are actually putting up deals. Nebius earnings is this week. If Nebius announces another $20 billion deal with a hyperscaler, I mean, goodness gracious, dude. At that point, again, I don't think Iren's dead. I don't think Cypher's dead. Wolf, I actually think all of these companies, one should be net bullish on. Bitcoin right there, 81,000, if you believe in this AI build out, because we simply don't have enough compute. So theoretically, the Iren dip could be an opportunity. It's just annoying, I would imagine, for shareholders that are very heavy in it, because they keep diluting, they keep using shareholders as a piggy bank to get all the capacity needed to get the compute online, but they're not getting the deals necessary to actually show that they're using their capacity to, start monetizing, making revenue. And they missed on earnings. Like, they missed on earnings badly. It's not even like the earnings were that amazing. So that's what you got on Iren. That stock's down 9%. We'll see how the market interprets it when we actually open, and we'll see how this plays out. Is Micron hitting 800 today? Micron hit like 830 last night. So to be honest, probably the only way Micron doesn't hit 800, it's at 790 right now, is if the market opens and it's a massive sell the news, just based off the idea of like, hey, things are going up way too quick, way too fast, and people start selling it. But once again, every dip gets bought seemingly for Micron over the past couple of days. It's averaged like a 3% move over the past couple of days on an $850 billion company, because of this fever that people have around being exposed to the most important bottleneck in AI. And can you really blame people? No, but I also can't blame people for just wanting to say, I'm not going to engage in this right now, because at the end of the day, there are other opportunities that are out there. Like, I think the easy money in Micron is over. I don't think it's even controversial to say, unless this thing is going to $5,000 a share, the easy money is probably over. But there is other quote unquote easy money, even though it's not as easy, because a lot of these names have run, but you're going to have to just close your eyes and buy, or wait for a dip that might not ever come, right? It's just one of those things where DCing is probably the best strategy on a lot of other names. Like a Corning is up 100% this year, but it's not up 800%. And if you believe a Corning is going to have a lot more demand going into the future when it comes to photonics and what they're doing with glass, then that I think is maybe a more attractive opportunity. CoreWeave, that's also down in the pre-market. Marvell's down about 4%. Qualcomm, I don't know what the reason is for the pump. We talked about it on Friday. It seems like they are potentially working with OpenAI or Apple or some of these other companies on different devices. Meta, I think, was one of the ones that was named. We have no confirmation of what these devices are, but just the assumption that Qualcomm will be involved in making a new chip that will be on a new device, and that new device will challenge the iPhone for superiority in terms of consumer hardware. I guess that's enough to get this to pump. Went from 196 to 220 on Friday, fell back down to 200, now at 237, as this is up 8.43% in the pre-market as well, as that continues to go green. There are still many names that are down, like Reddit and SoFi, 30%. Yeah, so this is part of the reason I'm open sourcing this database. I don't know when the rotation is going to happen back into some of these names, and quite frankly, the picture on the rotation happening back, Reddit, I think it should get back to 170. I don't know why this thing fell to 153. It was a really good earnings. So I don't know. I feel like this one should go higher. But the SoFis of the world, the Robinhoods of the world, unless Bitcoin really catches up, they're just not names that the market cares about. And I think we have to be honest about it. There's just way more exciting stories, and being exposed to some of those exciting stories is what matters right now. The market's forcing everyone to adapt to something new, unless those companies really prove it. Because, for the past month, the market did not care about space or care about Rocket Lab. Rocket Lab was up basically 8% for the year. Now Rocket Lab's up 40% for the year. Why? Because they got 80% of that 40% in one day on Friday. So now the stock looks like it's had a great year because it's crossed 106, but they announced a lot of things on their earnings. Anduril partnership, Raytheon partnership, Neutron deal. They crushed earnings, and then they also acquired a robotics company. Like, you put all those things together, it becomes undeniable. Then you have the SpaceX IPO coming up. Boom, that's great. Some of the other companies that are, not moving that much, or the street doesn't care about that much, like the drone stocks, some of the fintech stocks, they're just not putting up those types of massive reports that gets the narrative to also be cohesive with their numbers. Not to say their numbers aren't enough to justify a higher price from here, but the narrative right now just isn't there. And that's why that stock has been taking a hit as well. So let's talk about some of these other names. We talked about Iran, talked about the Iran Trump stuff, but overall, this AI CapEx cycle continues to be stronger and stronger. And, one of the other things I spent a lot of time thinking about over the weekend is just, is it going to stop? Does the build out stop? And honestly, and there's a few videos that I'm going to link inside of the database when I put it out. There are certain videos to watch, and some of those videos that I've been watching are tours of data centers. In fact, I met someone at the meetup who works at Supermicro. Super awesome guy. He was at the meetup. And, I got to pick his brain. That's also the cool thing about the meetups, right? Just getting to talk to people that are in the industry. And I was like, what is it like working at Supermicro? What is it like, deploying these GB200s? And the stuff he was saying about how sophisticated the technology is and how important it is. And obviously I gave him some shit because I was like, were you the guy who smuggled the chips into China? And he started laughing. But like learning about the nuances of the data center, what goes into the like very, very small parts of making the data center happen and getting the data center online, and then realizing how profitable the data centers are for these hyperscalers at the end of the day, because they have more compute, which means they can sell more products and services and generate more revenue. That makes me think this build out is lasting for a very long time. Whether we have a Democrat or a Republican in office, we just need more compute. If the demand for that is serious, then the demand for all the different elements of the stack is very serious. Micron right there, 6.3%. And that's why this is not slowing down, which is, why you're also seeing the memory names continue to catch a bid right here. Fallen Zap, thank you for being here. Thanks for signing my Pouncer hat, Mitt. So glad to meet you. It was awesome meeting you as well. Again, Chicago meetup was great. I'll put out the picture soon for everybody to see, but it was a great time, and deeply, deeply appreciate everyone who was out there. And we're back. We are back in business, and we got a lot more to talk about. All right, some of the earnings we got. Keel, they missed on all their numbers. This was Bitfarms that turned into Keel. Keel is there used to be a Bitcoin miner with Bitfarms. Now it's a data center play. They just didn't have the best earnings. So that's why that stock is down. I mean, they need to announce a deal just like Iran needs to announce a deal to get the street to be more excited. So right now they have not done that, which is why I think you're not seeing that much momentum in the stock. Stock's down about 9%. It has rallied about 50% though from the lows. Circle, they beat by 17%, EPS 21 cents versus 18 cents, revenue 694 versus 714. This stock also rallied up to 130 going into the print. Now it's at 125, fell down to 113. Now it's at 116, up 3%. The Clarity Act is the most important thing for Circle. That has not officially gotten any clarity, although we're hoping it's going to happen by the end of the month for May. But that's why that stock continues to be slightly green as well. Asso Rock, what's up, man? I told you guys you got me this Richard Mille design, so I will be wearing this out for sure. Appreciate you being here, dude. Super, super cool guy. I will link his website if anyone wants to check it out. But thank you for being at the meetup, and hopefully you got to enjoy with everyone being there. There's the link right there if anyone wants to check it out. Okay, so the other big thing that we had was Monday.com. Now, Monday.com might not seem like such a super, super cool company, but they beat on earnings and the stock is up 20%. And this one's a bit confusing to me. So EPS 93 cents, they brought 115, they beat by 24%. Revenue 339 versus 351, they beat by 4%. Revenue's up 24% year over year, EPS is up 5% year over year. Nothing too crazy. It is not a real Richard Mille. It is his website's designed version of a Richard Mille. If it was a real Richard Mille, it'd be like $300,000. I think he likes me. I don't think he likes me that much. So no, it's his website. You guys can check it out. But I'm rocking this because it looks like one, and it looks pretty cool. Monday.com is up. And this is kind of confusing because this is a software name, but this is a software name that really is not like at the crosshairs of AI. I mean, it's a task management platform. Stock's up 15%. We'll see if this ends up holding. It was up 20%. But the market cap was about $2 billion before the market opened. So like it's up now. I mean, I don't know if this holds, but this is also a little bit of a weird spot we're in this market because your companies like AppLovin and Palantir can barely catch a bid, and they're very intertwined with AI. I would argue they're a little bit more important than Monday.com, and they're growing like crazy. Monday.com, that's growing 20% on a $300 million base, gets a bid because they announced some AI features. Like, it's weird. It's confusing. It's the market being highly selective and being selective for, in my opinion, kind of dumb reasons. Like Datadog, I understand why they gave them a pump. Datadog's actually really important for enterprises, and they announced a new AI platform that allows those enterprises to get deeper insights into how the company is working with their data, which makes sense to me. Again, I still think other companies should be catching the bid, but at a $70 billion market cap, it was at $50 billion before they got the pump. Like, I get how the market could give it some love. Reddit going down doesn't make sense. AppLovin going down doesn't make sense. Obviously, I think Palantir going down doesn't make sense. Monday.com going up. I mean, if someone can tell me the big AI story on Monday.com, I'd love to hear it. But yeah, the story was the website or the platform was down 80%, right? The stock was down. So any bit of good news, I guess, was enough to get the street to get some love, as they did top out around 400. So maybe it was just kind of like a pricing play on where the valuation would go. They got to 400 back in 2021, and even in 2025 February they were at 312. But then you have other names like TTD that are down 80% as well, and they can't catch a bid. So it's a very selective market. Honestly, sometimes it feels like a gamble with how these stocks are going up and down. But the broader theme is AI, semiconductors, and those are the ones that continue to win at the level that they're winning right now. So that's what you had were some of the earnings. The big earnings after the bell is going to be HIMS and ASTS. So far we don't have those yet. ASTS, though, a nice 4% up right here in the pre-market. Rocket Lab, so I didn't get to talk to people on Friday because I didn't do the show, but how were people feeling on Friday when you saw Rocket Lab? And I mean, how did you react to what happened? Because we were on the boat. I was with Davis, Nate, and Doug, and Arthur, and Mike, and we're on the boat, and we just see this thing keep going up and up. And then in the after hours, it was up another 4%. We were like, what is going on, dude? Like, the earnings were good, but my goodness, I think it just cracked through 100 like it was nothing, and then just kept going. It got to 110 at one point last night. So I think Rocket Lab is starting to normalize $100. And I think because of that normalization of $100, it's getting into a new world. And look, do I think a pullback could happen from? Yeah, I mean, it's a $60 billion company at this point, trading at 90 times sales. Of course, a pullback could happen here. Maybe it's a bit extended, but they also announced 5 things back to back to back, 5 really big things, not just fluff PRs, but like really big PRs on Thursday. So I get why the street is giving it the love. And then you got SpaceX coming up, which is probably gonna have a lot of FOMO of people trying to chase SpaceX, which was kind of part of the reason that this was one of my bigger dip buys at around 67 in March. It was just like, I think it'll be a nice SpaceX play. Now, ASTS, I also think it'll be a nice SpaceX play, have a lot more Rocket Lab than ASTS, but if they could have a massive type of earnings like Rocket Lab had, where they just have announcement after announcement after announcement, maybe this thing catches up. This thing was at 130 earlier in January. I mean, the idea that this gets back to at least 90 isn't that crazy if they really crush earnings, but Rocket Lab has obviously raised the bar, and we're going to have to see if ASTS can follow. Yes, the Rocket Lab partnership was also amazing. I think Matt and a lot of the other retail guys just interviewed Sir Peter Beck and the team recently. So it's on his channel. You guys can check it out, but they asked some phenomenal questions. And I just love the management team of Rocket Lab. They embraced retail so early. I mean, they saw Matt and Vince talking about this at $5-6, and they were like, we are going to actually talk to these guys and treat them like they matter because they understand our business better than everyone else. So very, very, very cool to see. And that's why Rocket Lab is up. Lumentum was up as well, or is up right now, up 5%. They're getting added to the NASDAQ. So Lumentum getting added to the NASDAQ. This is another photonics play. I know this name is up 300% year to date. It's hard to buy it here. Based on the research I've done, the necessity for optics and the demand for optics is going to be greater and greater and greater. And it's hard to deny how important that's going to be. Another stock that I'm looking at, again, all this is going to be in the database when we put it out, so people will be able to see a lot of this due diligence, is Nokia. And forget the fact that Nokia is up from $10 to $13. I have been rewatching the Jensen interviews with the Nokia CEO from January explaining their partnership. It's kind of hard to fade it. There's definitely option flow that's also super relevant, I think, for the people that think this thing can get to $20-25. But when you really look at why NVIDIA partnered with Nokia, why they took a 3% stake in the company, doesn't mean the stock has to go to $100, but it does mean it's going to be relevant in the AI story over at least the next 5 years. And I think that's the big takeaway from a lot of the research that I've been doing. Are these names relevant over the next 5 years, presumably next 10 years, theoretically, as the cycle continues? And is NVIDIA putting a stamp of approval by buying Lumentum, buying Nebius, buying Coherent, buying Nokia, taking all these equity stakes? Why are they doing it? They're doing it because they want to help support the supply chain that they're building. And they know the supply chain and building it is incredibly relevant. And if they don't do that, then these they're not going to be able to hit their numbers because they're not going to have these companies well capitalized to get them to hit their numbers. So I think more and more of the stack becomes important. Silver is up 7%. I don't see the reason for why silver is up. Obviously, there is a general correlation between silver and data centers. When silver was pumping like 10% every other day back in January, the thesis was, it's so funny because there was a lot of people touting the thesis that silver is the most important component of building a data center, which honestly is probably not necessarily incorrect in terms of how important that commodity is. But once it topped at around 120, like that argument kind of went away and it didn't even seem as relevant anymore. So I think the due diligence on some of this stuff needs to be incredibly important. Like, how important really is memory? How important really is optics? And I would say it's honestly a hell of a lot more important than silver in terms of just the demand that we're seeing versus the free cash flow from some of these companies that are putting up. I mean, Micron's gross margins are now approaching 80%. In the .com bubble, they were up 50%. Like, Micron is approaching NVIDIA level gross margins because of how much pricing power they have, which is obviously showing why the memory trade is so relevant. Silver, again, I think super relevant. I don't know why it's pumping right here. I don't see the massive headline, but you do have silver making a move. NVIDIA down about 0.5%, and it's outtaking gold, as gold is not. Gold is up like 0.5% right here. It's relatively flat right now. So we'll see if silver can continue. Yeah, BlackBerry is also potentially making a comeback. They've got their QXO platform. Yahoo, Chris talked about that. If that went public, where there are some private equity sources thinking that they could take Yahoo public again, that would be crazy if you have Yahoo, Nokia, and BlackBerry come back from the .com bubble and that goes up. I don't know about MRAM. I've been seeing this pop up on social media. I know it's up 31% right here. This is a super small cap, $632 million company. I think the trend is up and to the right. So if you're trading this, obviously you have to see if that trend continues. In terms of an investment, I've heard takes on Twitter that this is a pump and dump, and people are saying this is the next Micron, and there's a lot of other people saying this is full of shit, and then there's other people saying no, this is the next Micron. I genuinely have not had time to even look at this. I saw a few headlines of it last night. I will try to take a deeper look at this today. I was going through a bunch of different earnings calls from Corning last night and some of the other optical names to better understand this photonics industry. But yeah, MRAM, we'll see what ends up happening to this day and if this can catch a bid. This is a relatively, smaller cap company. So obviously it can move if you get a lot more people into it. HIMS is going to happen after hours with ASTS. So we don't have HIMS or ASTS in the pre-market. We have it after hours, but I will be live covering it after hours and seeing what we've got. In terms of Qualcomm catching a bid, again, I do not see a headline here. I see no headline. If anyone has a headline, let me know. But there wasn't really a headline on Friday either. I think there was just a lot of potentially institutional flow coming in. And that institutional flow is coming in for a reason, given the level of move that it's had. We don't really know that reason. The best we know is that the Qualcomm CEO is saying that there's all these different chips the company's going to be making for these new devices. But outside of that, I don't think we fully know why it's getting a pump right here. Poet's up a little bit as well. Fluence Energy still looking into that, but that pumped EOSC the other day. That's down 5% though. EOSC, that is also down from its levels on Friday. The other thing people have been talking about is, hey, maybe there's other opportunities outside of memory, but memory feels a bit toppy. So if memory does top out, do all the other components of the stack top out? Like, do the optics plays, do the electronic plays, do the neo clouds? They all top out if memory tops out. And I don't know the answer to that, but my gut reaction says no, because we've seen a Micron and a SanDisk take some pretty ugly drawdowns, and the rest of the market still being able to hold up, because just because there's less pricing power in DRAM doesn't mean there's not a lot of need for server racks, which a variety of companies that build that, still have important levels of supply demand imbalance, which gives them pricing power. So I don't think memory is just going to fall off a cliff, and I don't think the prices for memory are going to go down anytime soon. I mean, it's kind of obvious given the free cash flows and the earnings beats that these companies are putting up, that memory becomes more and more important. But if it were to happen, I don't think that's a thesis breaker for the entirety of the AI stack. But time will tell to see how this plays out. Then you had Trump pump up Dell, which actually got some price upgrades this morning over the weekend. I saw this and I was walking through the streets of Chicago and laughing, because it was like, why not? Intel and now Dell.
And I want to thank the Dell family. It's a great family. He is amazing. She is amazing. They've done such a job on that. They put up a lot of money too. Put up $6.25 billion. That's somebody. And he started making computers on his bed in college and selling them because they were better than other computers. And I said, how did you do that? He said, well, I did it and I just never stopped. It just kept going. So go out and buy a Dell. They're great.
I don't even think he was trying to pump it. I think Trump was just like, yeah, Dells are great. And then the market in this environment was like, okay, go out and buy a Dell. There you go. 13%, down about 2% in the pre-market. Got a couple upgrades this morning. But, I mean, Dell has become very, very important when it comes to these server racks inside of these data centers. And although their margins aren't amazing, the volume of demand has been pretty incredible. So, you're getting a lot more excitement, a lot more momentum, and obviously these names have started to move up a little bit more. A couple pieces of breaking news. Trump is said to be increasingly frustrated that the Cuban government remains in power despite months of U.S. pressure. Sources say he has been asking advisors why efforts to weaken the regime have not succeeded. That headline is very confusing for me. And quite frankly, I believe that headline because Trump has talked so openly in the past 2 weeks about Cuba being next. There's one side of me that says Trump wants to get rid of the war with Iran and move on so he can focus on the economy. And he's got a stock market that is absolutely booming. Like, how could you not be so happy that the market has ignored all the geopolitical stuff and is just moving forward? And the AI agenda is what's carrying you. And hopefully that can lead to a Republican sweep in the midterms. But then he's like, the other part of me is saying, well, he likes the chaos because now he wants to start something with Cuba. And maybe he thinks he has a lot more leverage with Cuba than he has with Iran because Cuba does not control 20% of the world's crude oil exports, which is why he thinks he can kind of go 2 for 2 in this, or maybe 3 for 3 if you include Venezuela. But, the other part of the story is like, well, if he gets into a scuffle with Cuba, what if the market does start to feel like that's also an issue and they get a little annoyed that, he's starting something up in another part of the world as well. So I think the market being up is definitely making Trump feel like he has more leverage to do a lot of this stuff because the AI build out is absolutely ignoring all the geopolitical stuff, obviously ignoring the price of oil, and the earnings growth is all that matters. And Trump's economy has a lot of good earnings at the moment right now. So we're going to see eventually what's happening with Cuba and eventually what happens with Iran. Again, the main update today is that Trump has rejected their proposal, and we are continuing to see a lot more negotiations. We got one political alert. Let's pull this up real quick, and then we will get into the market open. I have a bunch of different headlines that we will talk about throughout the day. Again, thank you, everybody, for being here, and thank you, everyone who came to the Chicago meetup. Super, super, super fun, and just deeply, deeply enjoyed getting to sit and really talk with people and hear their stories about how they got into everything when it comes to following along the stream. Gilbert Cisneros bought AMD, Amazon, Carvana, DoorDash, Palantir, Palo Alto Networks, and Tesla. He sold Microsoft, sold NVIDIA. So there's your new financial disclosure from one of our politicians. Bought AMD, Amazon, Carvana, DoorDash, Palantir, Palo Alto Networks, Tesla, sold Microsoft and NVIDIA. Microsoft continues to not really get a lot of love in this market. Capital continues to outflow from the big guys into a lot of these smaller companies, but these smaller companies continue to have a lot more momentum when it comes to the AI trade. All right, here we go. It's the mutes versus the no mutes. There were a lot more mutes at the Chicago meetup that told me in person how much they hate the bell, but there was a decent amount of no mutes. And, at the end of the day, we got to wake our asses up. Monday, 11th, 9:30 a.m., the stock market is now open. All right, wake your ass up. Let's get into it. S&P opens up down about 0.12. It looks like that could flip green any second. I mean, that is not really meaningfully red. 763 or 736.65 as that's down. Fluence down 2. Dell down 2. MRAM up 27. Nokia loses the entire pump. It was at 1320. Now it's at 1285. Lumentum, that's up 7. They got included into the NASDAQ. The NASDAQ and the S&P have basically been deciding any name that's super, super relevant is going to get fast-tracked with inclusion. And that's likely going to happen with SpaceX. It's happening with Lumentum and Coherent. They got into the S&P a week after Jensen invested in them. So, I mean, at this point, the indices also recognize that the AI super cycle means that people have to have exposure to these names. And I think that's why these names continue to be included. Rocket Lab goes slightly red, now flipped green, 105.73, but it looks like we're formalizing 100, which would be nice. I think it's too early to say we're formalizing or normalizing 100. It's only been less than or a little bit over 24 hours, but let's hopefully see throughout the week if we can hold 100. ASTS, that's up 1%. Monday.com up 17 on their earnings. Circle goes down 1.4. Datadog goes down 1.2. Trade Desk goes down 1.8. OSS had a massive run last week. That's down 1.34. SanDisk is at 1582. Where is Micron? Are we at 800? We are at 800 a share for Micron. That's up 7%. Google down 3%. Really? Wow. Google, not 3. It was down 3. Now it's down 2.2. I will see if there's a headline, but at the end of the day, once again, people are probably up a lot on the Googs. Might just be taking some easy profits right there. Iran down 13. as management continues to dilute without delivering a deal, I mean, there's not much to say. If they don't get a deal anytime soon, who knows where this stock is going. But the NVIDIA deal we talked about on Friday, the bear case to it was that they're not actually investing. And so a lot of people are questioning, wait a second, why should we be so excited about NVIDIA if they're not really directly investing yet into Iran? But hopefully this dilution gets them closer to getting that hyperscaler deal if we are as compute constrained as it seems like we are. Nebius, 181.75. That's up 2.64%. We've got earnings soon on that. Corning, that's up 4% again. I like Corning here. I've been doing a lot more research about them. We'll have a lot more stuff out in that database on some of these specific names that feel like true beneficiaries. But that one's green. SanDisk, that's up 2%. Looks like that's about to go to 1,600, which it did for a second. Navitas, are we green? Navitas is green, 8.3%. I didn't see any headline on Navitas. Nope, I do. Navitas is launching a partnership with India's first commercial GaN power IC family, and they're leveraging the Navitas industry-leading 650V GaN platform. Okay, so basically a new deal for Navitas with Cient, which is an Indian commercial company. There you go. Navitas right there, up 8% a day. Meta, 603 as that one continues to go down. Qualcomm, again, I don't have the headline for you, folks. I wish I did. I do not have it, but it's green. If anyone has it, let me see it. If you're going to tell me OpenAI phone rumors, that's from 3 weeks ago. I know the CEO did a podcast about it on Friday. Maybe that's why it's running. Maybe. But outside of like a pure headline, it could also just be a lot of institutions loading the boat in case this one is going to continue to have momentum. Nebius, 183. That's up 4%. SoFi getting a little bit of love right there, 16, up about 1.5. Navitas just hit a 52-week high. Nokia back to going green. Toast is up 1%. DraftKings down 2.3. Moderna is up on speculation that an early vaccine to the hantavirus is coming out soon. So you're seeing some of your pharmaceutical names catch a bid right here just based on that idea that there's going to be more vaccine preparation. Micron, 815. Oh my goodness, Rocket Lab. She's not stopping. 109. Wow. I mean, you can't have a better day for ASTS to report when the other big space name is going up super big. I mean, this gives them a lot of potential momentum to just keep going green and getting some love. Rocket Lab, we'll talk about the Cerebras IPO because in this environment, I think that IPO is going to be absolutely crazy. And we'll talk about why, but they will be IPOing, I think, on Thursday, either Wednesday or Thursday. So we'll talk more about them. Datadog, that's up a little bit. That was red. Whereas Palantir, that one is down 2.8%. You've got ServiceNow, which is up 2.95. Salesforce is down. And then Adobe is up a little bit. So the SaaS names being selective here. Your ServiceNows are getting a bit of a bid. Your other names are not. Atlassian, Salesforce, Oracle down 2.23%, even though that seems more like a data center play. Twilio, that's down a little bit. Zscaler, that's down. CrowdStrike, which was up 7% on Friday, that's down a little bit. But you're seeing some of these names continue to go down. Amit, would you roll options today when we have CPI tomorrow? That depends on what you think about CPI. Also depends on the option, right? If you're deep in the money and you think CPI is going to be bad and the market's going to react to that, Tesla going red right here, down 1.2%, then no, you wouldn't roll it because if the market's going to go down, then your call option would be less in the money. But begs the question, if we have a crappy CPI and then the market goes up, because I mean, at this point, does the market even care about CPI? Like realistically, does the market care if we come in at 3.8 or 3.7%? It would be bad because we were at 2.4% not that long ago. So like, yeah, for the underlying economy, probably not the best thing in the world. But I don't think the market cares. So when you talk about rolling options right here, you have to really ask yourself what gets this market to come down. Micron just went from 818 to 794. I feel like in a blink of an eye. Yeah, look at that red candle. Like, does that dip get bought up immediately? And if it does CPI have any real relevance? And if it doesn't, then obviously I don't think the market's going to care too much. Qualcomm down from 248 to 240. TSM is down 4. See, this is weird. This is kind of weird. I get Micron and SanDisk are a little undervalued to say the least, but them pumping 10% every other day and then your big guys like a TSM and NVIDIA going red is a little confusing to me. Maybe it's just a valuation difference, but Micron's not a small company. No, it's not a $100 billion company. TSM's $2 trillion. Micron's almost half of TSM. Micron is half of TSM, not technically, but Micron's just hit a $900 billion market cap. It's half of TSM. basically 45% of TSM. So a $900 billion company running 6 to 8% every day, more like 8 to 10%, to be honest, over the past 5 days. And then your TSMs and NVIDIA's being stuck is, I don't know, it's a little weird to say the least, but it's also like, that's the trend that you can't necessarily fight. Where's Intel? We didn't look at that. That's at 130, right? 128.50. The big deal on Intel on Friday, I wasn't live for this, but they're partnering with Apple officially partnering with Apple. So because they're partnering with Apple, that's what's getting the markets get a lot more momentum. 129.95, that's up 645 billion. Amit, do you think all this chip action is starting to wake the market up about the demand for silver? No, because all this chip action. Okay, so yes, if you're talking about price action, if you're talking about actual demand for chips, and that's been pretty strong over the past couple of months. So I don't think that would explain why silver. It's not like the market woke up and said, "Oh wow, silver is super important for data centers and chips, and we need, this asset should be priced higher," just because Micron's going up in terms of its stock price. But because the demand for Micron and optics and all this stuff has been pretty relevant over the past 5 months, while silver has been down. However, if the stock price is going up is enough to get the market to look at silver more seriously, maybe that is something that's happening. It's just silver as a macro asset you would think would be more correlated with the actual underlying fundamentals around what's going on in the chip space. Reddit just flipped green. But yeah, to your point, I mean, maybe all these prices going up is enough for the market to think more about silver. It's just for the past 5 months, the market hasn't, but the earnings have been pretty substantial, which means you would think that silver still becomes relevant. Akamai, that's at 148.97. Corning trying to go up to 200 right here. Meta, the liquidity has to come from somewhere, right? Meta going down, 601. Microsoft is also going down, 411, as that continues to get a hit. Rocket Lab is unstoppable, 111.65. Talk about freaking going to the moon, baby. This is a good one. A lot of us that have Rocket Lab, maybe we don't have Micron. We needed something to kind of help take off, help the portfolio. This one's really helping, especially if you bought that dip at 60, $70 back in March and April. I mean, the majority of Rocket Lab's gains have come in the past 2 days, which is kind of crazy, but I guess that's how this market is. Salesforce is down. Adobe is up. Meta getting absolutely wrecked. I wonder if it goes below 600. The market makers have always pegged it right to 600 when it has these down days. We'll see if it actually gets below there. Poet, that's up another 8.7% today. Fastly, that's up 3%. I did buy more Fastly at $20.25 on Friday. Again, when I put out this entire database, I'll have all of the different names that I like. It's going to have about 250 companies, and then there's going to be about 20 out of those 250 that I've done a little bit more extensive due diligence on. So that entire database should be out tomorrow. Everyone should be able to get access to it. And I want it to be living and kind of thriving and growing day by day. So there's going to be a lot of new updates to it every single day, and hopefully it should be really helpful for people. NVIDIA, are we going for all-time highs? We have just hit all-time highs on NVIDIA. 217.80 on NVIDIA. That hit an all-time high. Rocket Lab is not stopping. That's looking for 113, 112.96. Auto loan and credit card delinquencies in the U.S. have hit all-time highs as per CNBC. Nothing more 2026-ish as that headline in the face of the S&P hitting all-time highs. Auto loan and credit card delinquency is going up. S&P does not care. We are green. 737.75 as that continues to go higher. Redwire, that's up 4%. They diluted by 300 million. Market didn't care too much about that. BMNR, that's up a little bit. Synaptics, that 128.50, that had a monster move on Friday. Air Test Systems, that's green. HubSpot, which fell 20%, that's up 204.92 as that continues to go green. Oh, you're right. NVIDIA. No, we did hit all-time highs today. 218.11. Yeah, 217.80 was the previous all-time highs. 218, that's the new all-time highs right there. We're seeing it get to new all-time highs in front of us. I mean, 220 would be incredible, but 218 as NVIDIA is up there. Navitas up 15%. That's green. Why is Celsius dumping? Because they don't make chips. That is why. I think that's my best analysis. They don't make chips. OpenAI launches AI consulting arm valued at $14 billion. OpenAI on Monday unwrapped its new consulting and services business backed by billions of private equity dollars. Wow. It's called DeployCo. DEPLOY Co. This is probably why Palantir is down today, to be honest. I think the market is interpreting. There was a Wall Street Journal article over the weekend as well of Palantir being commoditized by Anthropic, kind of the same narrative we've heard. if OpenAI is going after the intermediation layer to try to get like these enterprise clients, I think that's probably why the market's thinking, and not just Palantir, but some of these other software names are getting a bigger hit. Nebius, did we touch 190? We did. 190.83. 190.83. Micron just fell from 818 to 783. So you got a little bit of potentially short-term momentum to the downside on Micron. Let's see if this dip gets bought. Let's see. 818 to 784 just dropped $40 almost in 5 minutes. It's only been 20 minutes since the market even opened, or 12 minutes. So let's see what happens to that one if that dip comes in. Nebius 109. Nebius has earnings soon. Nebius has earnings soon. Thursday, right? No, Wednesday. Pre-market. So is it tomorrow? No, I think it's Wednesday. That's going to be an important one. I mean, there's been a lot of price action going in sprint. Yeah, Wednesday, but also, I mean, one could argue the price action is justified as the market. And, when Iran dilutes, I think once again, it tells people, hey, there's a king in town when it comes to neoclouds. And as of now, it's not Iran. So you just might have some people rotating, to be honest. That could also be leading to some of that momentum. Micron 788, Iran down 10%, Palantir 133, Celsius 30.19, Vertiv, that stock up another 3.2% as that continues to go green. Keel flips a little green, almost 396. It was at 318. So you're seeing that one go, or try to go a little bit more green. Kratos, is that up on the day? Kratos continues to go down. Wow, another 5%. Yeah, even after good earnings. Ondas, this thing was stuck at $11 for a couple months now, below 9. As that also continues to get hit. Fluence Energy down 5. Again, Fluence Energy, we're going to need a lot of energy. They had a good earnings, but they also went up 30%, and now they're down 5. And I think that's another thing that's scaring a lot of people, which is like, hey, if I buy into these names that I know are going to be relevant, I know they had good earnings, I know there's a story there, but they're up so much, am I going to be holding it back? And quite frankly, the answer is yes. And I'm telling myself that as well. If I choose to buy a Corning, which is at 200 right here, up 7%, like yes, you're like expecting this thing to go back to 185 just so you can get a little bit of an entry. I mean, you might end up missing the entire story on it. And I think that's why the Micron dip keeps getting bought, because people look at that Micron 783 to 795. It's going to go back to 800 in a couple seconds. Like, it's one of those things where you really got to deploy the DCA, but you also have to deploy it in a place where you don't get scared of being in a position just because it's run up so much, because you're never going to be able to survive. Like, if you're buying Micron at $896 billion market cap and you're not ready to buy it at $650 billion market cap, if it falls that much, which I don't think it will, but let's say it does, you can't own this stock, right? Or you at least can't have an entry price right here. Which I think is similar for the Cornings or the Akamais or so many of the other different names that are out there. The Qualcomms, that if you buy it at 240, you got to be ready to buy it back at 200. Doesn't have to get there, but if it does, it's got to mentally be okay with you, given the genuine long-term understanding of this build out and thinking it's not a toppy bubble that is a fake run that you're seeing on a lot of these names. Akamai, there you go. Another 3% move right there. 153. SPY continuing to hit all-time highs as Nebius going for 191. We are at 191 right there. We actually almost hit 192, 191.99 as that one continues to go green. AAOI, that is back up 11% on the day. This was funny because this one took a nasty dip on earnings, fell to 130. The more I learn about optics, the more you realize an asset like this, it's probably extended from a valuation perspective, but the relevance that it has is so important. And it's the same for a lot of these other photonics planes. Now, that doesn't mean you go up and buy every single photonics company that's out there, but a Lumentum, a Coherent that Jensen has co-signed, they end up becoming super, super important. And that's why they continue to be green. NVIDIA, we are almost at 220. Almost at 220, 219.17. Innodata is flying because they had a really good earnings. They're also a very small company. It was like a sub-billion on Friday. So that one continues to go up. Is the demand so high that some of these stocks are able to go up 3% over every day? Is the market overestimating the demand? Well, that's a really good question. Here's the thing. I think that Micron going up like literally 8% every day for the past 5 days is not really a question of demand being so high. It's more so a question of demand was always high. The market's now re-rating the stock. Like, we're seeing the stock be re-rated in real time. And kind of something would happen. Rocket Lab basically has been consolidating for 5 months, and now it has a breakout. Instead of getting 3% every day for 10 days, it got 30% immediately. because the market re-rated the stock. Micron, because it has that whole cyclicality narrative to it, you have so many doubters. So the re-rating takes time to play out because so many people sell into the pump because they don't think it's real. There was a couple of people at the meetup that told me, dude, I bought Micron at 200. I was out at 500 or 600. Like I was done. And I couldn't believe it would jump up to 750 on Friday. So I heard that story at least 5 times from people because they didn't think it was possible for this thing to keep moving, but it is. Maybe those were good buys, but as of now, the re-rating is happening in front of us. And the re-rating to Meta to the downside is also happening in front of us. That's the part that gives me the ick about this. Like the fact that it feels like all the capital is coming out of Meta and Microsoft, which you could say whatever you want about the software companies. Meta and Microsoft will be relevant for the next 100 years. Like these are very, very important companies. They're spending all the CapEx. They're growing their AI revenues. When I see a supply chain bottleneck stock go up and Meta and Microsoft have to go down, it just feels weird. Like take down the fintechs, take down the SaaS names, take down, the random stocks that are like HIMS, which I don't think it should go down, but if you have to take some liquidity out of HIMS to do it, okay. But taking down Meta and Microsoft is weird. HIMS, by the way, 28.66. They've got earnings. They've got earnings after the bell. We'll see what they can do. NVIDIA, she's trying for 220. She is trying. Also, for those that feel a little bearish, you don't have to, or just want to hedge. I mean, there are instruments that are out there that allow you to hedge. There are short semiconductor ETFs that you can buy. And if they go to zero, your semi-longs go up. You don't have to, it doesn't have to be super like, oh my goodness, I have to sell everything because everything's going up. It's like, well, you can hedge as well. You can buy some puts. If you think your Micron position has gone up too much, you can buy levered ETFs to the downside, which are down 95% for the year. But if we do end up getting a top, those are going to go up like crazy. So, I mean, there are ways without absolutely selling everything to get there. There it is, NVIDIA, 220. There it is. It's been a long time coming, but there she is. $5.37 trillion company. Are the hyperscalers following her? Amazon's green. That's green, 273. And you got Google that's also trying to go green, 396. There you go. And now it looks like she doesn't want to stop. Now it looks like she doesn't want to stop. There it is. NVIDIA 220, Rocket Lab 100, Nebius 191, Micron 800. Let's ring the bell. Congratulations. Seeing this market give some pretty incredible opportunities. It's a bit more of a diverse rally today. It's not just 2 or 3 semiconductor names. Look at EOSE Energy breaking out. That was at 775. Boom, up to 848. As that continues to go green, you're starting to see some of these other names come back to life. Iran also was down 12. Now it's down 6. Seeing a little bit of Iran action come back. Again, I don't think this is the time to go super bearish on Iran. It is annoying 100% because they keep diluting without a deal. But if the compute constraints are as large as they are, I mean, eventually someone's going to have to give them a contract because we just need more compute. And, I think part of the research on this entire AI ecosystem is why these names are running. You just don't have enough. You just don't have enough. Anthropic went from $1 billion to $44 billion. It's likely going to be closer to $80 billion on their next update. I mean, literally the CEO is saying we need to grow faster because we can't handle it. He's like, it would be easier if we could grow faster. When you have a CEO at one of the biggest AI companies saying something like that, that means the entire industry is just moving to a different level. OSS, that's red. SanDisk is down, but Micron's up. That's kind of weird. I mean, Micron has a different forward earnings than SanDisk. I think Micron's actually cheaper than SanDisk. Micron's forward PE is now 13 at 780. Micron now falling a bit, 818 to 778. We'll see if that one gets bought. SPY right there is at 738. ASTS finally coming back with an 8 handle. Look at that. Let's see if their earnings today can get them to make this move higher. Nebius, that one 193. It touched 193.65 as that continues to go green. Mitt, do you think NVIDIA will pass 250 this year? Look, in this market environment, I want to say yeah, but I'm also still a little skeptical that it gets those extra $30. Just given that's a lot of market cap for NVIDIA. Now, one could argue, well, it's a lot of market cap for Micron, so why wouldn't NVIDIA get the premium? And yeah, in all respects, it should. There's zero doubt in my mind it should. especially with that. I mean, theoretically, NVIDIA is a $300 stock right now. Like if you really gave it a meaningful premium on the earnings growth that they're putting up, like a company that should get a premium on the earnings growth that they put up. But I wonder how much the market's going to be willing to give it to it. Now, if the market keeps keeping up the way it's keeping up, the way that we're saying, yeah, NVIDIA is inevitably 250 by this year. But if we get some, action where shit just goes south, then maybe that doesn't happen. Now, when you see a Bloom Energy go up 9%, yeah, it makes you think even one of these names that's worth 80 billion, it was down 20% last week. The fact that that one's recovering without any meaningful headline, that is inducive of the amount of AI spend that's out there, which inevitably all comes back to the one and only NVIDIA. AMD, are we still at 460? We are at 456 on AMD, slightly down on the day, but NVIDIA is green. What about 370? I don't think it'll be 370 this year. I would be very happy with 250. Do I think it should be worth more? Sure, but we got to see if we can hold on to a lot of this momentum. HIMS 2876, Rocket Lab almost 112 again, as that's trying to go green. RVI, I think, is green because of two things. Number one, their stake in OpenAI getting re-rated. I mean, if Anthropic's going up in valuation, maybe OpenAI is going up in valuation. RVI invested $45 million. Also, people could just be buying up private stuff, right? VCX was up 20% on Friday. Let's see if it's up today. VCX is up 25% today. Yeah, this is all of those private funds kind of are moving in unison right here. And RVI is part of it. IONQ's up 9. What is the headline here for Quantum? I don't see it. I do not see it. We have CPI tomorrow. We'll talk more about that. We'll talk about the Cerebras IPO. IONQ. I don't see any headline. I don't see it. Nothing for Quantum. I imagine that's helping. I mean, they got that DARPA contract last week. D-Wave, that's up 3%. That's getting some love. AMD just flipped red again. This thing is up like 80% in the past month. Not that crazy to see it chill out a little bit. Amazon 273. Google is still red. IONQ is up on a Quantum IPO. Quantum IPO. I did not know there was a company called Quantum going IPO. It is. NVIDIA's partner, Quantum, filed for IPO. 1.5 billion. Ticker is going to be QNT. QNT. This company is owned under Honeywell. Huh. It's an NVIDIA partner, and it looks like it's spinning out of Honeywell. That what came out on Friday. Are they going public today? I don't think it's going public today, but it's getting the Quantum stocks excited. Nebius, my goodness, 194. The freaking covered calls that people are stuck in on this thing. I feel like you just got to be patient at this point. I sold half my position way too early, so the other half I have forced myself to not write covered calls on because I'm like, okay, at this point, I'm just going to let it ride and hopefully make up for the gains I lost on the half I sold too early. ASTS back up to 81.45. But even if you sold 170 calls thinking you're going to be okay, you're now deep in the money. There's some stocks. Palantir is one of the stocks that did that back in 2024, 2025. And it took almost a year for your covered calls, like if you had them at 130, 140, 150, 160 to come back to earth, as Palantir ended up taking a pretty ugly dip. For Nebius, you're just not seeing that right now. Rocket Lab, same thing. I mean, if you've got heavy covered calls on this thing, yeah, it's not really giving you too many opportunities to get out. 112.59 Rocket Lab, as that tries to go to 130. Yeah, even if you sold 200s, you're sweating right now. There's some names where the covered call just goes against you, and you have to be okay with letting it get sold or rolling it out and dealing with it. But then again, the reason you sell the calls is because you don't know if something can go super parabolic, and sometimes a name ends up doing that. Qualcomm down from 250 to 234. Micron also down from 820 to 776. If Micron flips red on the day, that would be very telling. I don't think it will, but let's see. This is a pretty nasty drop. That's almost $50. You had a lot of buyers in between that. So we'll see if this dip gets bought. Lumentum, again, that's up 7% as that continues to go green. Hood is red slightly, 76.54. Bitcoin just below 81. Yesterday, Quantum filed for IPO. Quantum is majority owned by Honey and is said to be miles ahead of other quantum companies like Rigetti and IONQ. This IPO has been rumored for a while. It'll trade under QNT. $15 to $20 billion valuation. They made $31 million in revenue in 2025, and they lost $200 million. But Honeywell owns a majority of it, and if they're going to lock up the float, they will probably manufacture a squeeze, which is what SoftBank has done on ARM. Speaking of locking up the float, let's talk about Cerebras. I think if I can get shares in this, and it's a big if, right? Because we got to see if the retail allocation is even meaningful. If I can get shares in this around 135, I think it's one to be able to get. So originally the IPO was going to be priced for 115 to 125. Now it's priced for then it got priced at 115 to 135. Now it's 20x oversubscribed. It's going 150 to 160. They're increasing the shares that they're offering from 28 million to 30 million. It looks like they're going to be raising $5 to $7 billion. Yeah, I'll probably need 160. So 135 looks like a fever dream. But this is a stock that looks like it can pump to $200 or $220 on day one. The thing about Cerebras is that they make a big ass chip. And the chip that they make is not an NVIDIA killer, but nonetheless, the market has interpreted this as one of the most important private companies in regards to at least challenging some of NVIDIA's dominance. And there's a really good video on Cerebras that, again, I'll link in that database everyone should watch. And it kind of highlights exactly how the market thinks of them from a competitive perspective. Now, I don't really think it's going to matter towards NVIDIA. NVIDIA is NVIDIA at the end of the day. But the point is, the narrative of being the best competitor towards an NVIDIA as a significantly smaller company than an AMD, yeah, that's a compelling story. And in this market, if Intel gets a $700 billion valuation, I think Cerebras can get to a $50 to $100 billion valuation. So they have $20 billion in OpenAI backlog. That's correct. There's a lot of really interesting things about them. Now they're doing all the typical things you do when you go public. You announce a lot of fancy stuff, and some of this stuff is not material. Some of this stuff doesn't even really matter. Some of this stuff is just showing a shiny object to investors on the roadshow. But the point is, in this market environment, forget all the shiny objects they're talking about. If you're getting 7 to 8% pumps a day on these large cap semiconductor names, and Cerebras is seen as one of the next ones that could be that large cap semiconductor name, but it's not as large as the largest ones, pushing 500 billion market cap, it probably gets re-rated day one. Doesn't mean there won't be a massive pullback there, but I think if anyone is trading it, if you get in around 160, 180, the pop to 200 feels like it's very possible, even if you want to sell it at those levels. BlackBerry goes red as that one is down. That used to be up in the morning. And then Planet Labs, is that getting some love? Planet Labs, that's up 0.8%, a little bit. ASTS trying to make a bigger move right there, but still down below 80. What do you mean by database? Tomorrow, I'm going to be open sourcing something I've been working on for the past 2 weeks, and it's going to have a lot of information about all these different companies in the semiconductor ecosystem. Just a lot of names that people know about, but a lot of names I think people might not know about. I mean, the amount of names that I've seen that are up 30 to 50% that I've never talked about, no one in the chat has ever brought up, but it has some relation to data centers or AI or optics or something. It's just unbelievable to me. And so I think this database hopefully will be really helpful. We'll have a lot of names out there, and then it'll be updated every single day with a lot of different ideas and concepts. And I'll be talking about the stocks that I like the most in the database. But I just think we have to redouble down on the research efforts. It's not enough. I was saying this at the meetup to everybody. It's not enough in this market environment to be like, oh, I like this company, solid growth, good fundamentals, decent margins. Does the market care about it? And does the market care? Or do you think the market will care about it for the next 10 years when it comes to this AI build out? Not to say those companies aren't investable, but man, the companies that are getting the bid is just obvious are the ones that are part of this AI ecosystem. And there will be dips along the way. The question is, will those dips get bought if this compute constraint continues to take place? And it looks like so far it's happening. Rocket Lab 113.50. Wow. NVIDIA getting a breakdown from 220 to 218. A breakdown, $2, but Nebius breaking down from 195 to 191. But no, you're still seeing a lot of big moves right here. Amazon at 273. Hala says this is a competitor to Steve's program. First of all, it's not even a program. Steve has built like a legit Bloomberg terminal. So Steve is competing with Bloomberg here. But this is like a Google Sheets. It's just a super highly customizable Google Sheets with a lot of information. But no, it's not like I can't afford the amount of tokens Steve pays for. to compete with him on building the next generation finance platform. Home sales. Let's take a look at it. Let's take a look at it for April.
Home sales in April basically flat. They rose just 0.2% from March to a seasonally adjusted annualized rate of 4.02 million units. The street was looking for a much larger 3% gain. Sales unchanged year over year. Now, this count is based on closings, so that's contracts likely signed in late February and March. The average rate on the 30-year fixed mortgage ended March in the 5.99% and then shot up sharply due to the start of the war with Iran. Now, inventory in April did rise 5.8% from March, just up 1.4% year over year to a 4.4-month supply, and that is still considered tight. That kept upward pressure on prices. The median price of a home sold in April, $417,700, up 0.9% from a year ago, but still the highest April price on record. Days on market did increase to 32 from 29 last April. First-time buyers at 33%, down slightly from a year ago. And 1/4 of all sales were made in cash. That is unchanged from last year. Now, mortgage rates have remained higher, starting this week at 6.42%. And other reports this month show that while pending sales have increased some in the last couple of weeks, supply is tightening again, Sarah. So that's going to keep that pressure up on prices.
Okay, thank you, Diana. Diana Olek. Guys, ahead of the president's trip to China this week to meet with Xi Jinping, wanted to take a look at what's happening with the Chinese economy, because we did get some numbers overnight on prices. Remember, we got CPI and PPI. So this is consumer price inflation and at the producer level as well. Remember, China's been battling deflation. It's actually had a problem with lower prices, which you can see where those numbers have been below zero for a while now. Guess what? The impact of the Iran war is actually lifting China out of deflation and causing a surge in producer prices, which actually had their highest levels in about 3 years, and consumer prices as well. Why? Higher oil prices, higher commodity prices because of the Strait of Hormuz. There was also a travel period in China, which was helpful. But in a way, it's actually been helpful because they didn't want to be in a deflationary trap. So the fact is they are seeing a little bit of inflation. When it comes to the China economic story, it's all about exports. I mean, their retail demand, their domestic demand has actually been weak. Here's the U.S. versus China in terms of just pure economy. Remember, everybody was scared that China would overtake the U.S. I mean, it's not even close right now. According to the IMF, this is what it's going to look like this year, $20 trillion economy versus our nearly $32 trillion economy. And even by 2030, it is not supposed to get even close, according to the IMF. Yes, they've had strong exports. Yes, they've had strong industrial production, but domestic demand has been weak, especially looking compared to the United States, where the
Look, China's economy has been pretty crappy for the past couple of years, especially after the real estate crisis that they've had and a variety of youth unemployment issues. The thing about China, which has been the biggest thing about China for the past basically 50 years, is their manufacturing prowess and their ability to have leverage over the U.S. because they basically make everything that we end up selling, which is why the tariff war was such a big deal last year. I wonder what Trump is really going to be trying to stress when he goes to that meeting in Beijing, because obviously it seems like the Iran issue has not fully been resolved. As per CNN, Iran wants sovereignty over the Strait of Hormuz. Oman also has rights to the waterway. I don't think the U.S. is necessarily trying to get Iran to give up sovereignty over the Strait of Hormuz. They just want Iran's nuclear enrichment program to be basically destroyed and then to open the Strait of Hormuz. But if Iran's getting ready to charge all these different fees and prices, then yes, that is kind of potentially abusing their sovereignty in the eyes of the United States. So I imagine if Trump tries to get Xi to get on his side, but obviously China is more on the side of the Iranians here, not the United States. They also think the United States should have never even gone in to the region. So it's going to be really important to kind of see exactly what happens. But that meeting's happening in 4 days. And I'm curious how that meeting plays out. Coinbase 206, that flips green along with Robinhood flipping green as well. Wow, Rocket Lab. My goodness, 115. I mean, again, if you don't have a Micron like myself, this is a name that's really, really helping the portfolio right now. I mean, this is 40% in 2 days. It feels a bit unsustainable. Then again, Micron's doing like 50% every week, but I don't know. I mean, I don't think you necessarily get the hell out and sell right before the SpaceX IPO, because it would have to fall 15% just to go to 100 now at this point, which I mean, who would be upset if Rocket Lab's at 100? So it feels like it's being normalized at this level. I mean, this is a real breakout. But would you buy at 115? I don't know. See, it's tough. Just like Rocket Lab was at 60, 70, it got to $57 on March 30th. I mean, like, it's hard to buy a breakout to 115, just like it's so hard to buy a Micron from 400 to 700. But if it's going up, this is where people have to make their decision on how much exposure they want to continue having. Lemonade, is that green? Lemonade is a little green, up 0.53%. On the day, Palantir still down. ServiceNow, it was a lot more green. Now it's about 1.1. Meta, they're not letting it go below 600. They have enough respect for Meta to get there. But they'll at least keep it above 600 right now. Did you take a look at Western Digital? Yeah, I mean, we looked at Western Digital and Seagate last week. Western up 8% on the day. Seagate, this one was, up another 6.4%. It almost looks like the money rotated out of Micron into Western and Seagate Digital, given Micron has fell about $50 in the past 10 minutes. And obviously they're getting that money from somewhere else. Redwire right there, that's up 9.3% as well. The quantum names continue to keep moving up. Alejandro, thanks for the super chat. Rocket Lab is a crazy pump. What is going on? Great seeing you at the meetup. Alejandro, was awesome seeing you at the meetup as well. Thank you for coming out there and spending some time on that Saturday night. I think what's happening with Rocket Lab, we talked about in the morning, they had 5 big announcements on Friday. It's just that simple. Those 5 big announcements culminating with the SpaceX IPO coming up. The SpaceX IPO has lost a lot of buzz given all these memory stocks and semiconductor names have been moving so much. But when Elon comes back and says, hey, we are the most important company on the planet, and you have a chance to buy a piece of us, I think there's probably a lot of institutions preparing to play that via a Rocket Lab or an ASTS, which could mean the dump would also be pretty ugly once they feel like they've got enough alpha. But it also means in the short term, the run-up could be pretty aggressive, which is why I think that's great. And why is Microsoft coming down? Microsoft and Meta, to me, are where you get liquidity from to buy other AI semiconductor names. I really do think Microsoft and Meta will be amazing buys in 5 years. I don't know if you want to say they're generational buys right now, but they are buys where, looking back from 5 years, you're not going to have any doubts of if their business models continue to go up into the right. Whereas there might be some doubts on some of these AI supply chain names on, if their growth is super sustainable. But you're not going to get the 2026 alpha, at least in the short term, on a Microsoft or a Meta, at least in the moment. Marathon, that's up 3.7%. That's green. Silver continues to pump. Don't see a headline from Marathon. EOSC, just a massive move. Again, no headline from them either, but I think Fluence kind of got this thing to pop up a little bit higher as well. And you're seeing that go green. Charlie says, Amit, I'm excited for the database. I have a large data center scattered watch list, so this will be very helpful. I think it will. And it'll be free, by the way, for those asking how much it'll cost. It'll be free. But I think it's helping me when I'm doing my research over the past couple of weeks on all these data center names. And I think it'll be well organized enough for people to hopefully get value out of it. CoreWeave flipped green. This one was at 110 in the morning. Look at that, 118.23. That one goes up. Nebius still just below 193 as that one is at 192. JTB, I see you in the chat as well. It was awesome meeting you. Super, super cool. Meeting some people at the meetup in person. He was like, yeah, my name's JTB. He's like, I know who you are. I didn't recognize your face immediately, but I know exactly your username in the chat. So happy you came out, and hopefully you enjoyed at the meetup. SoFi, a little bit of move. Qualcomm trying to go back up. Dell is down. Not that surprising. I think it didn't pump on anything fundamental on Friday outside of Trump saying to buy a Dell. So that's not that crazy for that to go down 6%. But that is down 6%. Amit, can you add Peng to the database? Peng is in the database. Peng, Himex, a lot of these names that people... The only thing that's not in the database are names that you can't buy in the American stock market, because I'm not putting all these Korean, Taiwanese names, European names, because a lot of people just don't have access to them. So we'll try to make them a universal name that anyone can buy on the NASDAQ or NYSE. But there are obviously a lot. Also, I've just never really invested in international equity, so I don't feel comfortable even talking about them easily because I just don't know all the dynamics of buying some of those names. Oracle, that's down 1%. AppLovin, that's down 4%. Even after those earnings, was not able to catch any meaningful bid, but that's still down. Amazon goes red. TSM also Still red, down 2.4%. By the way, JP Morgan initiated coverage on Oklo. $73 is their price target. Oklo's at 76, up 5.3%. So this is what I mean, right? APLD getting a nice bid right there, up 7%. Like, even the big banks at this point are realizing that Oklo has nothing exciting about it when it comes to revenue or profits. But the narrative of this thematic will eventually result in massive deals, which will lead to revenues and profits for a company like Oklo. So at $13 billion, do we think this company should be worth 50 to 70 billion one day, given how important they are when it comes to small modular reactors? Yeah. Now, maybe that's a 2035 story. But the point is, it's starting to be priced in more and more. And if you get any bit of deal, Oklo signs a deal with Google or something like that, headline goes, it's just, we've seen it happen over and over again over the past couple of months. And I think that's why the street is trying to front run some of these stories, which, might not just be stories. They might be something that's a lot more real over the coming days. ASTS, that's up 7. Innodata still moving 31%, still only a $3.5 billion company. That one not really doing anything even that crazy when it comes to its market cap going, massively up. But it is obviously up from that $1 billion level that it was at a couple of days ago. HIMS almost 30, 29.15. Almost 30. DGXX, this is another way to potentially play the Cerebras IPO. There's a couple that we'll talk about tomorrow that are correlated to Cerebras as well. From an energy and a data center perspective, and those are getting a little bit more attention today. SanDisk flips green. It was red throughout GFS. That's another one. Global Foundries, that's up 0.5%. This one's had a bit of a re-rating as well. There's just so many of these names. So again, when that's out tomorrow, we'll be able to spend some time every day talking about different parts of that database and going through it. And not all of them are buys, right? There's gonna be like 250, 275 names. Not all of them are buys, but I'm going to highlight about 15 to 20 of them that I really like. And then we'll keep a track record on the rest. It'll be like kind of like think of it as a massive watch list for all of us to look at every day to track the data center space. CoreWeave 119, Duolingo continues to go red. Marvell is down. Let's check the stock draft. Matt's got to be beating me. Rocket Lab has got to be taking him to the glory. Wow. Okay. He is coming after me right here. He's at 52.12. I'm at 52.64. Less than 40 basis points separates Matt from taking number one again. He's up 329 on Rocket Lab. ASTS up 93. AMD and Nebius obviously helping me out a lot today. Steve's up 40. He's got a 5-bagger on Micron. Incredible. Tanner's up 8, and then Chris is up 20. I think Matt's going to eventually. I mean, if this Rocket Lab momentum continues, there's no... Wow, hold on. We got a rumor. Qualcomm potentially looking to take a stake in Poet. Where's Poet? 10%. Maybe that's why this was pumping in the morning. Qualcomm potential. Maybe that's why Qualcomm was pumping. Qualcomm, that came out at 10:13. So literally a minute ago. Qualcomm looking to potentially take a stake in Poet. That would explain the Poet pump over the past couple of days. And I don't know if that would explain the Qualcomm pump, but it would explain Qualcomm's diversification outside of just CPUs for your phone. And I mean, Poet's a photonics play. Yeah, I mean, maybe you got Qualcomm thinking of coming into the data center to an extent to take a stake in one of the optics plays that are out there. Granted, it's a little fishy because, I mean, again, like Poet does like $500,000 of revenue, right? Like, so it's not the revenue number that makes the numbers look ridiculous when you look at their multiples. It's the lack of any significant new deal flow. And the one time they got it, the CFO, said something stupid on a podcast and they lost it. So I don't know. It's just kind of, it's weird. But then again, if they announce some big deal, Poet's a $2 billion company. If they announce, it is what it is, right? You announce a deal with someone and the market goes crazy for it. So if they end up announcing something, maybe that's what gets it a move. SoFi getting a little bit of love today as well, 3%. A little bit more love. Again, Moderna working on that hantavirus. That's why that stock is green this morning as well. Yeah, optical interconnects just more and more important as we're seeing the street revolve. So that, wow, are we about to hit 7,400 on the S&P? Are we about to do that? We're at 739. We already hit it on the SPX 74. SPY probably going to catch up right there. Okay, so Tom Lee's 7,300 top has been officially wrong. Maybe 7,400 is where we top, or maybe there is no short-term top. And maybe the summer is going to be an epic summer. I mean, selling may go away has also been dead wrong. Nebius 196, as that continues to go green. Mercado Libre, which Michael Burry bought. What is Michael Burry feeling, by the way? Mercado Libre down another 3%. Michael Burry bought it at, I think, 16.50 last week on the initial 8% decline. I wonder, he's got to be doubling down on the puts, because the puts have gotten really cheap. Like, you've got to be doubling down heavy right here. You got Howard Marks, who says this is not a bubble. You've got Paul Tudor Jones, who says we've got about 2 years left before it becomes a bubble. I mean, his puts are for January 2027. At this point, unless we have some epic crash, even if we fall 10, 15%, it's not going to be enough to get his puts in the money. So we're going to have some issues. Reddit, did we flip green? Reddit is flipping green a little bit, 2%, at least something. And then your quantum names, I guess that new IPO that's coming up is important. From Honeywell. D-Wave, that's up 5.49%. The company that owns a bunch of Cerebras, and then let's look at a couple macro charts because we didn't pull that up yet, but just like ARM, SoftBank owned a bunch of ARM. When it comes to Cerebras, 87% of the float is locked up. 87% of the float. I don't have the exact company that owns the majority of it, but I do know that's the number, 87%. For ARM, it was 90%. So that's another reason why I think the squeeze could happen, because eventually they will let go of that float. But if it doesn't happen in the first 6 months of the IPO, there is a meaningful squeeze, and it's probably in their interest to not let go of the float so soon yet. So, because if they let it go at a higher price, they would raise more money. So that could be the other reason for why Cerebras could be catching the bid. Yes, WYFI, White Fiber. This is another name that's in the database. This one was talked about for a while in January during the small cap run. Then it kind of faded out. And you can see on its chart right here, it got a lot of momentum, got to 23, came down to $10. This one people are arguing as an Anthropic proxy as well. Now it's back to 28. So you are seeing a lot of these names kind of come back to life as well. Mike says, are we running too much too fast? Getting kind of nervous right here. I think for those that feel that we are here's kind of the philosophy that I'm going to be deploying as well. There is a variety of names that I like and that I'm going to be taking some starter positions on in the broader AI data center ecosystem space. Not going to be like $100,000 into 15 different names, but it's going to be what I think is sizable enough for me and appropriate enough for me to take some risks. I am also going to be buying calls on a short semiconductor ETF as a hedge. I think it is very reasonable to buy out of those short ETFs are down like 80% for the year. Buying leaps on those in case the semis just top out and everything goes to shit is your hedge. So there's two ways to combat the nervousness feeling. You sell, you take some profits, then you can't be too nervous because even if it goes up, at least you made some profits. Or you buy some puts or buy some calls or just stock of short inverse ETFs to have something of a hedge. That's helping you. Rock Lab right there, 116. As that hits a new all-time high as well. But to answer your question, yes, it is a bit weird how fast and how quick things are running. I think it's hard to deny that anyone's feeling a little bit of, doubt or just like, hey, is this stuff sustainable? Whoever bought Micron at 818 today, probably annoyed. That's at 782 now. But if 782 is your dip and it's going to 900, people are not going to care. And I think that's also the other mindset to have when thinking about all this data center ecosystem momentum. It's like every dip, if it continues to get like either this legit is a .com bubble where we have a NASDAQ falling 80% and everything was fake and it was all a scam and it's going to take 10 years to recover, or it's just not that. And if it's not that, then every dip ends up getting bought. Now, that doesn't mean you go out and buy the shittiest companies that are out there just because every dip gets bought. Some people are doing that, and that's fine. That's what happens in a massive bull market. But it does mean, like, if a Marvell, which is at what? Topped out at 175, now 168, that falls down to 130, 135. People are going to buy that dip because that's a high quality company that has a massive contract with Google TPUs. Even if you think you're paying a premium, you're getting your 10, 15% haircut, that's when dips get bought. And it wouldn't be crazy to see that playing too. Elf, that's down 7. Nike's down 3. Once again, whether you're Elf or you're Meta, if you're not part of the thematic, you are getting hurt. Now, I think Meta is way more quality than Elf, and I think buying the dip here, you're not going to be upset in a couple of years, but in a couple of months, you might be. And that's just the nature of how this market is playing out. NVIDIA trying to get back to 220. It was at 219. Tanner said I sold NVIDIA covered calls. That's another thing I forgot to mention. If you also are just feeling super nervous, whether it's puts, whether it's inverse ETFs, which, I think could be a lot more effective just in the short term if you get an ugly drawdown because, they're levered up and they can go up higher, or selling covered calls, or just selling the parts of the position you feel you're overweight on. There's a lot of ways to combat feeling nervous. You don't just have to feel nervous and stay nervous. There are ways to mitigate some of that stuff. Or you can say your mom didn't raise a little scaredy cat. You can just keep buying at the highs and say screw it, which quite frankly has really been the right strategy, especially on Lumentum, 8% dip last week. If you bought it, you're back up 10%. Like, it just doesn't matter. It's SanDisk fell from freaking 1,100 to 900. It's up 50% in a week, as that's at 1547. Yeah, you could say scared money doesn't make money, but obviously I think there's a lot of scared money, and for good reason, because things have just gone up so much, which is crazy. I was gonna say the mama ain't raised no B word. I really was, and then as soon as I was gonna say that, I realized how many people at the Chicago meetup told me their kids are listening in the car in the background, and I'm like, I'm not gonna say that word. I'm not. Someone told me 2 of their kids already know how to say the word ass because they say wake your ass up every morning. So they already started cursing at like 9 years old. So I already feel bad enough. So I will try to censor some of those words. Nabius 193.95. That keeps going. Oklo at 77. Yeah, mama ain't raised no fool. That's what I should have said. There you go. Micron 780. Okay, some macro stuff. So first of all, DRAM. This thing is going crazy. DRAM has hit $6.35 billion in 36 days in the market, faster than any other ETF in the history of the stock market. 13% alone on Friday. The memory craze is real. They're coming out with 2x DRAM in a couple weeks. So you can get levered against all the memory names pretty soon. This is, by the way, faster than the big. It took IBIT 43 days to get to $6.5 billion. It took DRAM 36 days. So the memory appetite is insatiable. Second chart that I think is kind of crazy. The S&P 500's PE ratio has actually fallen during the rally over the past month. The year-to-date change in the S&P 500 price and earnings valuation is actually down because the consensus forward 12 months EPS is up. So the price is up 8%, 9% if you include today. The consensus forward 12 months EPS is up 13%, which quite frankly might end up going to 15, 16% if these companies keep crushing their numbers. And the PE ratio has gone down. Now, the PE ratio is elevated against historical highs. I think we're at 24 times. Usually it's at 18 to 21 times. So yes, the S&P is technically quote unquote overvalued, but the earnings growth is matching up faster than the raise in the price, which inevitably leads to multiple compression, even if the price goes higher, which is compression for a good thing, for a good reason, right? This is like NVIDIA in 2023, where the stock price kept going up, but the multiple kept going down. If that's what's happening on the broader S&P, I mean, once again, the fears of being nervous, it's like you can do a bunch of different things to combat those fears, whether it comes to selling puts, inverse ETFs, covered calls, even if they're 2% positions of the portfolio, just so you feel there's some protection. But some of these stats make you feel like you shouldn't be so nervous because we've got a lot higher to go because this AI build out is very real. SOX, semiconductor ETF, now 60% above its 200-day moving average. The last time this happened was March of 2000 and July of 1995. If you think we are more 1995 than 2000, which I think most people think we are. Again, March 2000 was the top for the dot-com bubble. Then the percentage increase above the 50-day moving average at the highest levels in 26 years might not matter that much because the earnings growth is supporting it. Which is why an APLD catches a bit today. I don't think there was a deal on Applied Digital today. That's up 9%, but it is green. UBS reiterated their price target on NVIDIA at 245, maintained their buy. You got the average price target for NVIDIA in the 270s on the day. What price is Cerebras IPO? It likely is going to be 160 at the open, but I think it's going to be way more than 160 when it does open on Wednesday. So, if you can get shares at 160, amazing, but it's probably going to be a little tough to get those shares at those levels. Western Digital, that's up 6%. ServiceNow, that is up 1.35%. Amid, are you excited for the new Drake album? I am literally more excited for the new Drake album than I'm excited about anything in the market right now. And I have no regrets saying that, because I've been waiting 4 years for this album. Now, if the album sucks on Thursday night, I'm going to be angry Friday on the market open. I have not had a good Drake album in almost a decade. It's been a long, there's a lot of good songs, but a cohesive body of work, it's been a long time. So I am really hoping that we get one. So yes, I will care about that. Micron, don't put that A minor stuff in the chat. Don't do it. I get that he lost the beef to Kendrick, but we're not getting into that conversation. We're not doing it. We're not freaking doing it. Are we talking about Kendrick's music? No, we're talking about Drake. We're talking about Drizzy Drake, the GOAT. Okay, we're talking about the guy who actually gives us music to listen to at least every year, versus the guy who disappears every 5 years. But yes, he lost the beef. I'm not salty about it. He lost the beef. I get it. Objectively, he lost the beef, but it is what it is. That's what makes the comeback story even more exciting. So hopefully it'll be good. But Meta 602, SanDisk 1530. Navitas, again, they have that partnership with this Indian company today. I don't even think this Indian company is that big of a deal, but it was enough to get the stock to pump. Again, this is also relatively small, $5.5 billion. Someone just bought $1 million of Rocket Lab calls for 120 strike, expiring this Friday. Okay, you got the option flow coming in heavy on Rocket Lab, 115.60 as well. There is the apartment. Not the apartment, the announcement. I was looking at Applied Materials. That's not for Applied Digital. Some of these names are so similar. Okay, so for AMAT, not Applied Digital, here's the headline. Applied Materials and TSMC launch a new semiconductor innovation partnership focused on AI and high-performance computing chips. Applied said the Epic Center represents a $5 billion R&D investment. This stock relatively flat. TSM up a little bit. Down a little bit. But I don't see an APLD headline here. Micron now falling from the highs, still up 3. Okay, let's put this in the chat. What price do people think Micron tops at? If you were going to say it tops, I'm curious. Put a number in the chat. What do you think it would top at? In the year 2000, okay, for Micron, the PE ratio went up to 100. Okay, 100. They weren't doing as many dollars per share as they're doing right now. I don't know if this market is willing to give Micron 100 times PE. Right now, we're at 13 times forward. If it goes to $1,000 on $100 of EPS and you give it a 15 times forward, that's a $1,500 stock price. If you were to give it a 30 times forward, which is reasonable for the type of growth that they do, right? 30 like a lot of people here would pay 30 times for a company that's growing as fast as Micron. That stock's at $2,200 roundabout, which is over a $2 trillion company. I don't know if the market is willing to do that for Micron. I don't. But if they are, then at 772, one could argue it's cheap. The question is, will that earnings multiple actually become as aggressive as it is? And I just don't think the market's ever seen something happen like this in memory, even during the dot-com era, which is why it's hard to make the argument that it can get that high. A lot of people here are saying 1,000. The average price, not the average price target, but multiple price targets on the street are now at 1,000. So, I mean, either that is the top of that cycle, or 1,000 is just the first step in what is an incredibly important cycle for memory that is not slowing down. Intel, by the way, going red. That was at 1:35 in the morning. The other thing that's important is robots are going to need memory as well. I think that's something we're forgetting about. You need higher context windows inside of the chips in robots, which are all going to need memory. If we're going to have billions of robots, we're going to need billions of chips, which means we're going to need more memory in those chips. So, maybe Micron's moved too fast Same thing with the Western Digitals and the SanDisk, but maybe the demand cycle really is a lot less cyclical than people think, which is something to think about when it comes to the broader story. Corning right there, that's up 6%, 199.50. Redwire, that's at 12.11. A little bit up on the day. What's your average on Iran? 43 is my average on Iran. It's at 55.26, still down 9% on the day. Again, I have more Nebius than Iran, but I bought Iran at 43 because I think people were hating too much on it. But if they don't announce a deal soon, the hate will continue because all this dilution and no deal, again, it's just not a strategy going forward. Coinbase about to go potentially red, 203. And you got NVIDIA at 217. What do you think about HIMS? I think HIMS could actually pump today. I think there's a lot of catalysts that are going good for HIMS. The FDA chief might be replaced by Trump. I think that was the catalyst on Friday that got the stock to pump. Also, it's short 35%. So if they have any good news, this has been a market where if your stock is super short and there's a piece of good news, it squeezes. Like it's happened multiple times. Now, I know we've been saying that's the thesis for HIMS for a long time for this thing to get back up to $50, but maybe today on a good earnings is where that short squeeze comes into place, but it would have to be good earnings. Last earnings was not good. It was not good, right? So you're going to need a really decent earnings. Hut, by the way, up 5%. They announced the deal for, I think, 325 megawatts on Friday. And that stock got a 30% mover on the day. Intel 125, trying to hold on to it. Intel on Friday was crazy as well. Again, I wasn't here on Friday, but Intel was up. Micron obviously went up. Rocket Lab was up. Just a massive, massive day on Friday. And many of these names continue to be re-rated. Now, Intel, $630 billion. Is that going to $1 trillion, right? Like if Micron's going to $1 trillion, is Intel going to $1 trillion? And are those companies going to be worth more than, I mean, the Meta is worth $1.5 trillion. And you look at Meta's numbers versus it becomes a joke. But if we're talking about those companies getting to $1 trillion and the Metas and the Microsoft staying flat and really not moving, it would be a fundamental rotation once again into semis. And I just wonder, I think we all wonder how long that has to last. And not to say that all those names have to collapse, but how long do the exaggerated moves have to last, like an Intel, like a Micron? And, does that take down a lot of the other names is the bigger question here. Fluence down 6, Dell down 6, CRM down 1, Adobe down 1.5. Netflix, I mean, who's excited about Netflix in the midst of this chip rally? The answer is no one, but that also might mean this is the time to get more excited about it if no one's excited about a Netflix right here. Again, I think the thesis on this one is just a little tough because they're not going to grow a lot this year. The content, they need another Squid Game to really get people excited about it. They didn't get the merger with Warner Brothers, so they just don't have that much content. They also don't have that much debt, which is good. But, I mean, Netflix is not growing the way that a lot of these other companies are growing, which is why the street might not be that excited. Trump, we got some quotes from him to Fox News. Trump, Iranian negotiators told him the U.S. will have to retrieve the nuclear dust at Iran's destroyed facilities as Iran does not have the technology to do it. Okay. Trump also said, I'm considering renewing Project Freedom to Fox News, which if he does, I imagine that the Iranians will once again be upset and shoot back at those American ships if they try to escort different ships through. Again, that was the controversy on Monday last week with the UAE. We're going to have to see if that continues. Let's talk about Intel right here and the semis. We got an analyst here talking about it. Let's get their take, and then we'll keep going from there.
You raised your target price then to 75. The stock's 125. What do you do with it here?
Oh, well, we raised it to 100 and now it blew through that. And we said on your network that it could go to 100. But I'm pretty excited about Intel in general over the long term with what Lip-Bu's doing. Right now, what you're seeing with this company is you're seeing people say the product business can generate up to $4 types in earnings over the long term, at least. And then they have a foundry business. So what Lip-Bu's done, and with this explosion in CPUs has done, is it's allowed people to think about the sum of the parts again, where you have a foundry business and a product business, you have tons of optionality. The puck went to where Intel was, where they're in CPUs, which is now an AI chip and exploding, and everybody's short chips and they have a foundry. Intel's right there with a catcher's mitt, caught it and going. And we're pretty excited about what's going on with all the chip stocks we cover, and can't really keep up with the momentum. But this news about Apple is out. I mean, we upgraded it on this January 5th. I mean, so I'm not surprised.
Well, you just said you can't keep up with the momentum, and we've been talking about that all morning.
The institutional guys coming to the sort of conclusion that the momentum is too strong. Intel flipping green again on the day, and again every day being bought, and Micron and Intel are starting to follow each other. We've tracked this over the past couple of weeks now. Like they both go down and both go up at the same time. It's almost like they're kind of being paired together. But the fact that Intel is being seen now as more than a global foundries business, and that there's earnings that can attribute to shareholders that are outside of what they've been doing, and then you put the CPU revolution on top of it. I mean, once again, is it expensive? Yeah, you look at the price to earnings, 4 times. I don't know if you want to pay 110 times for this company, but they've got that SpaceX partnership. They're working closely with Elon, Apple now coming. I mean, there's just so many tailwinds that I don't think the market is caring that deeply about the PE ratio on this one, which, the market also is not caring about the PE on Rocket Lab because there is no E because they're not profitable, but that doesn't matter. And there might be more qualitative narratives on these companies that really do matter right here. And that's what's catching the bid. NVIDIA 218, Rocket Lab hit a new all-time high again, 118.10, as this one continues to get the bid. Jensen Huang was not invited and is not going to Beijing during the Trump-Xi trip. Okay, so Jensen will not be there. There was some speculation that you're going to have some CEOs going with him, maybe Timmy Apple, but he might not be going either. No PE, but all-time highs. Does it make sense? There's 2 perspectives on this. As Rocket Lab hits 118, one perspective is this is absolutely stupid, and this is going to have a really ugly crash, which, by the way, in January, Rocket Lab went up to 99, then fell back down to 57, right? So you saw that come down. The other perspective is you are being too myopic around purely numbers that define the company, and there's got to be a different story you have to look at. And I think there's a validity to both perspectives, but obviously the street, which has had Rocket Lab consolidate for 5 months now. It's not like Rocket Lab hasn't been through hell for the past 5 months. It's, it's been stuck for a while. You're seeing that breakout. And that breakout, I think, is happening for more fundamental reasons around the narrative, around the story, just versus the numbers, but that's okay. Now, I don't expect 120, which is basically what it's going for. But then you put the SpaceX IPO on top of it. What if the street's just going to take this to 100 billion? It's at 70, but what if the street's like, you know what? We're going to take it to 100 billion, and that'll be the proxy to SpaceX. Yeah, as Austin says, it's hard to value growth stocks on PE, especially when their growth, forget like the top line revenue growth, like partnering with Anduril is something that's going to help Rocket Lab grow a lot over the coming years, even if it didn't help them grow in Q1 of 2026. And I think this market is being very forward-looking on that assumption. Now, it's easy to say that when the stock goes up, when the stock goes down, you can say the market doesn't give a shit about the forward-looking projections, but the stock was down for 5 months. Now the market cares. Which so for people calling for it to go back down to 70, it's like it could, but it's like it was stuck there for so long. It's getting a breakout. There's a thing called a breakout that happens, and when stocks break out, they get re-rated. AMD below 400 would be very surprising now that 400 seems to be getting more normalized over the past 2 weeks. If it spends another month at 400, it's going to be hard to see this one losing those easy levels. I don't see the headline on Applied Digital for those that are asking. 4609. If anyone has it, let me know, but I do not see it. That is green. The Quantum headline is a new IPO coming out for Quantum. That's why that one's up. I don't know if that really matters though again, that to me is a little bit more hypey. Like there's an IPO coming out for Quantum, so all the Quantum names are pumping. But if that IPO for Quantum does very well, it kind of does make sense because that's the one of the first big Quantum IPOs that we're having. They're partnered with NVIDIA. Maybe that re-rates the entire sector. I mean, that's not that crazy to imagine. IONQ also, got that big contract last week. They also had a really good earnings, so that could be helping them. D-Wave right there, up 5%. AMD now flipping green, up 0.5% as well. Average pure break now. Yeah, we talked about this last week. I'm going to talk about it more in the database. Jason and Stock Talk both mentioned this name. when it comes to storage and cloud computing, up 15% on the day. Again, there's just a lot of these smaller names that as the Intels and Microns catch a bid, the Qualcomms catch a bid, there's smaller names that are out there that theoretically you've got to believe that data center build out will allow them to catch a bid, even if not in the short term. But the risk right now in buying any of these data center stocks is that we're heading into a little bit of a break. Forget calling it a top, but at least a break over the coming months, because June and July historically are not good for semiconductor names. But if we get more and more updates on just how much there is a crunch of supply versus demand, if Anthropic comes out and says we're doing 60 billion instead of 40 billion, and that, all these different narratives correspond, then I think you just DCA at that. Like, that's the most basic thing to do, but you're going to have to be okay buying some of these names that are up this much here, like a Vertiv, which I think is a hell of a name that has just had a massive rally this year. If you want exposure to it, the stock is up 105% this year. Over the past year, it's up 265%. Like, the idea of having this come back down to get it at, 195, where it was at in January. It's just, it's not as probabilistic, which means you set your stops, locate your entries, and take your chances right there. Marvell, 169.69. Also, if you bought Marvell at 178, does it really matter if it's at 169? Like, yeah, you missed it at 90, but like, if you believe the long-term stories, and I think that's just what everyone has to come to grips with. Like, even if you have no NVIDIA or AMD exposure, like NVIDIA and AMD are the stories of the stock market. It's just that simple. So if you have zero NVIDIA or AMD in the portfolio, it's like, obviously NVIDIA is cheaper, but from a growth perspective, but buying NVIDIA here at 219 to me isn't even that scary. Buying AMD a little bit more scary given how much it's run, but if CPUs continue to become the new GPUs and their growth is not fully priced in, there is a reasonable case to make that you can own these names for the long term, even if they fall 10, 15, 20% from here, and meaningfully be okay with holding these names. I also wonder how many retail portfolios don't have one of those in NVIDIA or AMD. It's a good question, right? And you can still massively outperform without having those. In fact, you probably have outperformed because you might be in much smaller names that can move higher. Obviously, AMD has done a majority of that performance this year versus NVIDIA, but I feel like pretty much every retail I would argue like 80% of retail portfolios has one or the other trying to help them out. I have both, but no memory. I don't have either. TSM is my main bait. Well, TSM has been incredible as well. That's done its thing. It's just with all the new things that I've been looking at as well in constructing this database and doing more research, it's almost validating. I mean, it quite frankly is validating why this is the greatest time in history to be an investor. There are opportunities everywhere. And these opportunities are part of our generation's industrial revolution, as Jason was talking about it. I think that was a great way to frame it. It's our generation's industrial revolution, and it's happening in front of us. And every time you get rate limited on ChatGPT or Gemini's too slow. By the way, I'm getting pretty bearish on Gemini. It sucks. Like, there is a reason Google did not disclose the monthly active users for Gemini. There is a reason. They do it every quarter. They didn't do it this quarter. And I think the reason is because it's not growing as much as people think. Like, Claude and GPT have taken the freaking market. We obviously know Grok's not winning because I used Grok yesterday as a fact checker. It was so wrong. It was laughable. I was like, oh my goodness, I can't use this. I know what the fact is. I wanted to see if you could get the fact right. And it was wrong, which is why Elon's spelling all this compute to SpaceX. Gemini in the enterprise might be working, but Gemini on the consumer side, and they're bundled Gemini with GCP and all that's like sure, that's fine for the enterprise. But for a consumer product, it sucks, dude. Like, it's the AI overviews are good, but you ask it any question that requires a little bit of numbers, a little bit of math, and it just shits the bed. I'm like, how is this happening? Like, you have access to Google search. You should have access to everything that's relevant and, at a hypersonic speed. Like, I wouldn't ask Gemini to build me a website. I would ask Claude to do it. And the fact that I can't ask Gemini to really do that yet, or I don't have enough faith that it would do it, it means it's not really the thing that's winning when it comes to consumers. It's just not. But the point is, all of these bots are just growing so substantially that there's so many layers to the stack that matter when it comes to making them relevant. And that's why Lumentum is up 13% on the day, because their product is just in much, much high demand. Some of you guys saying I'm wrong. Some of you guys are saying it's horrible. Like, I think it's 50-50 on the people that agree with me here. And that's fair. Some people love Gemini, but I'm just telling you my experience. It's not good. And I don't have an agenda against Gemini. I'm just saying it's just like I don't have an agenda against Grok either. I'm just it's ChatGPT and Claude that are winning. I tried Meta AI last night because again I'm doing a lot of research and that was shit too. Like all of them suck compared to ChatGPT and Claude. Like they're just running away with this market. And that's probably why the hyperscalers continue to set up all these cloud computing deals with them, because they know that at the end of the day they're going to be the ones that win and get all this demand. Trump said Iran's hardline leaders are going to fold. When asked about possible regime change, he said he is ready to deal with the current government until they make a deal. Okay, good. So EOSE crossing $9, by the way. Look at that, 12.6%. This thing fell 50% in February. Getting a bit more of a rebound. It looks like Trump's saying something that's relatively bullish by saying that he thinks he can work with the current government in place, at least right now. We just have to see if Iran is willing to still agree with this. Yeah, literally half of you guys are saying Gemini sucks, half of you guys are saying Gemini is amazing. So I don't know. I guess it's 50-50, but I think all of us say Claude and GPT is incredible, right? So like that's the difference. Everyone just agrees with that. Robin at 78. Wow, Elon's going to China with Trump. Huh. Elon and Trump on Air Force One. I guess it's not going to be awkward between them anymore. Kind of surprised Jensen's not going if Elon's going. I mean, Elon does a lot of business in China. He does a lot of business in China. So maybe there's something deeper to talk about. Trump, we got, I think, a couple of headlines of what he's talking about right here. Let's see if we have something here showing what he's saying.
So President Trump is saying very clearly, I've got all these options on the table. The one thing that is perhaps concerning the US and President Trump is the oil prices rising so high. Project Freedom deals with that, but he's not going to be rushed into making a deal that the Iranians are just dragging out. And so I think President Trump's been pretty clear ahead of his visit to China that he's got options on the table unless Iran comes back to them with a better deal. Remember, they called the deal over the weekend. He called it unacceptable. Then military action will start up again. The blockade will continue. Iran is going to continue to suffer. So I think we're going to have to see over the next few days in China how it plays out.
Once again, the market doesn't care. The market does not care. Tesla stock getting a bid. Tesla broke out on Friday. I forgot to mention, Tesla broke out on Friday with Rocket Lab and Micron. Tesla we kind of saw in the morning. Towards the afternoon, I think it closed around that 428 level. 420 right here, so still down 1.73% of the day. But Tesla is still down for the year, if I'm not wrong, right? Tesla year to date? Yeah, still down 4%. I mean, this one has not flipped green for the year. Any meaningful China catalyst? I think the headline this morning was there was a Tesla 10% sale headline, I think in China. Yeah, Tesla China retail sales fell 10% in the month of April. But maybe any positive headline with China would be bullish. Poet, where did you see the news? There are some outlets saying Qualcomm's taking a stake in them, but that's the extent of what I have on that news. Poet, 1289, potentially getting bought up on the Qualcomm stake. Again, Iran, they diluted today. That's why you got this one going down. It was actually down way worse in the pre-market. It was at 52, so it's at 55.97 right now. But more dilution. NVIDIA continues to hit all-time highs, 220.37. 220.37. Dude, imagine NVIDIA actually has an AMD moment this year. It's kind of crazy to say that, right? Because AMD has set the standard. But that would be very important for NVIDIA right here. Getting re-rated. 220.8. I mean, let's see. Let's see if 221 is on deck right here. But you're seeing a higher move up for 220. Yep, Everpure, we talked about that. That's up on the day as well. Applied Digital up 10. Rocket Lab up 10. Fluence up 4. Wow, Fluence just flipped. That was down 5 today. That's a hell of a reversal. This was at 22. That flipped like 10 minutes ago. I don't see any headline on them, but there you go. Complete breakout on the intraday. If semis are slowing down, are you going to cut some NVIDIA? So that's a great question. Based on the research that I've been doing to try to dig deeper and deeper and deeper into these freaking semiconductor names. And again, there's a lot of videos in this database. I really think people, if you have like 4 hours, 5 hours of the weekend, just watch all of them. Literally just listen to them in the background. Like, so helpful to understand the inner workings of a data center and why a company like Lumentum is running, why Corning is running, why AAOI is getting a bid. I bring all this up to say my conclusion is 221 on NVIDIA. I don't think I can ever sell NVIDIA. This company is too important. It is the epicenter of everything that is happening. And maybe its importance will be challenged by competitors like Google's TPUs and AMD's GPUs and CPUs and all that. And all that's, but it all goes back to NVIDIA that set the standard for what's happening. Like, I legit don't think even trimming this makes sense. This is going to be a $10 trillion. And if it's not a $10 trillion company, then all these other valuations are ridiculously overvalued because a lot of that memory demand is coming from NVIDIA that needs more memory in their chips. And the threat is that NVIDIA finds a way to innovate architecture so that they don't need as much memory, which is a risk to Micron. The threat is not that Micron outprices NVIDIA because Micron needs NVIDIA's demand and AMD's demand and Broadcom's demand. So it is really freaking hard, 222 on NVIDIA, to be like, yeah, I'm going to, sell my NVIDIA position and move on to a better opportunity when if you're in it and if you've been in it for a while, for some of you, multiple years, for some of you, a decade, even if you got in freaking a couple weeks ago at 170, like it is too important of a company. And I'm starting to feel the same about AMD. Now, look, AMD is probably overextended a bit, but it's too important of a company. It's just too freaking important. So, yeah, I think it's kind of like an Amazon. It's like a never sell. Like you just, now granted, if the CapEx slows down so dramatically, yeah, NVIDIA is going to get destroyed. But if you're bullish on the stock market, I keep saying this over and over again, but I think we have to keep, you can't be bearish on CapEx going away because that is what's holding up the stock market. If that goes away, NVIDIA is dead, which means it's not going away because all these companies are getting revenue and growth because of their increased CapEx spend. And as a result, I think you just hold on for this. It's kind of like Apple, right? Like Apple has found a way to outlive every decade. I know it hasn't performed like crazy like NVIDIA in the past 5 years, but there's probably going to be a 5 years where NVIDIA doesn't perform like crazy. But if you bought it at 110, 120, 125, you're not going to care. Same thesis for Apple right here. Coherent, that's green, 11%. That's running with Lumentum as that's continuing to go up as well. And again, NVIDIA could fall back to 200, fall back to 190. I just think if you believe the CapEx cycle continues, those are dips that get bought, especially if the dips are not rooted in some Iranian conflict that's driving oil up, which is a reason for the stocks to go down. Don't get me wrong. The March drawdown was justified given how ugly of a macro environment it turned out to be, but it wasn't justified that, zero of the dips should have been bought. And I think a lot of people kind of recognize that around the 170s for NVIDIA, probably the 220s for AMD, and took a chance on it. Applied Digital still up 11%. And it also makes sense NVIDIA getting this re-rating up to the 220s because it's like you can't have Micron be almost 1/5 of NVIDIA's size and NVIDIA stay flat when the whole reason for Micron's demand, right, is at the end of the day, the GPUs that NVIDIA is selling that need more memory. And it's not just NVIDIA, it's a lot of other players, but NVIDIA is the big guy in this role. AAOI 23% rebound after falling almost 20%. Yeah, around the same price on Thursday as optics continues to catch a bid. Tesla right there, 422. That's trying to break out and go green as well. And you're trying to see some of these other names continue to break out. Arista, A-Lab, networking, all of that will be in the database, but all of it's important. I mean, quite frankly, the easiest way to, once again, run it's so basic, but you just buy SMH. You buy the ETF. Now, granted, I think the SMH has a lot of components. I think it's easier to find some of these smaller components that can do a lot better than just buying the whole ETF. But the fact that the ETF's up 50% this year, it just means the semis are are undeniable at this point. Which is why I understand why it's such a hard market environment for people to navigate, because the thing feels ridiculously overextended, 50% above its 200-day moving average. Like the last time again that happened was 26 years ago. So you kind of have to believe this time is a little different. Maybe it's not fully different, but it's different enough where you can go long the semis without being so afraid of the multiples. And quite frankly, the multiples aren't super euphoric. Some areas maybe that, not profitable small cap companies, but the Lumentums of the world, you can say it's expensive, but then you look at the growth rate and be like, okay, it's going to continue to grow, which maybe makes it less expensive. Tim Cook is going to be with China, with Trump in China. BlackRock's Larry Fink will be in Trump with Trump in China. Goldman Sachs CEO will be with Trump in China. Cisco CEO will be with Trump in China. And then Meta's, I think, chief global VP of affairs will be with Trump in China. Meta, Apple, Cisco, Goldman Sachs, Elon, and BlackRock. Why is Jensen not going? I mean, the Cisco guy is more important than Jensen? That's a little weird. Unless Trump doesn't want to be talking about selling Blackwell, which probably would be something Jensen would want to talk about, Yeah, no GPUs allowed. Dude, if Lisa Su was going on this trip, which she's probably in the same bucket with Jensen, she wants to sell her MI 450s there, then it would be concerning, because then it would be like, wait a second, why does Lisa get to get on the plane with the rest of you? Jensen had prior obligations. I'm pretty sure he could rearrange his schedule to go meet with the CCP with Trump. That would be a really big thing for NVIDIA in general. Marvell back to 170. I don't know. We'll find out, I guess, how this plays out. Amazon and Apple go red. Iran still down 8. Qualcomm, again, I don't have a headline for Qualcomm outside of the street front running whatever they think is going to happen with Qualcomm's new on-chip devices that has been rumored to be talked about. AMD flipped green, NVIDIA 221, and then Poet up on that stake of Qualcomm, potentially buying it. How do you feel about SMCI? Look, quality of company, obviously not as strong compared to... Here, there's a great question, right? The headlines that we see are SMCI is fake and E&Y accounting fraud and, smuggling chips into China, yada, yada. Those are all headlines that we have to see on the screen. At the Chicago meetup, I talked to someone who works at Supermicro. And there's a whole different perspective when you talk to someone who works there and is like literally installing the server racks for the GB200s to be deployed and come online versus the headlines. So, quality of company, I don't fully know because there's a lot of ugly headlines here, but are they going to keep growing because of the data center? Yeah, they will. Does that mean 35 is the best price to pay? I don't know. But if you want exposure to that sector, then why is the mic being... Okay, hold on. Hold on. Okay, are we better? Yes, no. Yes, okay, I'm going to fix it in a second as well. Let me pull this up real quick, then we'll fix it.
Satya Nadella is set to testify today in week 3 of the Elon Musk OpenAI trial. Our Kate Rooney's outside the federal court in Oakland, California with more. Morning, Kate.
Hey, Carl, good morning. So yeah, today we do expect to hear a lot more about Microsoft's role in this legal battle that's been playing out. CEO Satya Nadella, as you mentioned, slated to testify later here in Oakland, where we are today. So Microsoft has been a central figure in this dispute over OpenAI's transition away from its original nonprofit structure into what is now an $850 billion AI giant. Microsoft is a co-defendant in this case, accused of aiding and abetting what Elon Musk alleges is OpenAI's breach of a charitable trust, as well as unjust enrichment of some of its top executives. So lawyers for Microsoft say that its role was an innocent, essentially a neutral commercial partner. And then both OpenAI and Microsoft deny any wrongdoing. In this case, they say Elon Musk is basically a disgruntled competitor at this point. All this does come back to Microsoft's.
Okay, Mike should be good now, but Nadella will be testifying at this trial, and we'll see what ends up happening to Trump. What I was saying real quick about SMCI is when I talked to someone at the Chicago meetup who works at SMCI versus the headlines that we see, there's a different paradigm. So is it the best buy at 35.73? I don't know, but will SMCI keep growing over the next 5 years as we build out data centers? The answer is yes. And then the question becomes, how much does the market want to give them a premium on that growth, and how much does the market care about these headlines around smuggling GPUs and all these different things that we see in the abstract? But when you talk to someone who's like installing the server racks for the GPUs, like, no, it's a real thing. Like, the company's growing because they have a lot of demand to be able to build what they need to do to get these GPUs and these data centers online. And, that is something that I think is undeniable. Now, in terms of this Elon Altman court case, some of the articles that I've read are saying that Elon looks like he is in a better position given all these leaked emails by Greg Brockman and Sam Altman and all this stuff. But practically, it doesn't seem reasonable that he's going to get a $134 billion settlement. So, I mean, it'll take, I think, another month and a half for us to see what ends up happening in the trial. As Nadella obviously is going to be on the side of OpenAI today. He's not going to want to, help Elon out because he has a $300 billion equity stake in OpenAI. He doesn't want to see them lose $140 billion of that, I guess, agreement that would have to be going to Elon if Elon wins the lawsuit. So I don't know if Elon's going to win and get all that money, but maybe there's a settlement in between. But we're going to have to see as the court case continues. EOSC up 12%, Nebius 191. Falling back a little bit, but that's still green. Rock Lab, we hit 118.84. This is pretty insane. 45% move. 45% move in less than 2 days. I mean, it's pretty incredible. The settlement would pay for the initial $119 billion Terafab build out. Yeah. And going to your point, the fact that Elon's ready to spend $120 billion to start the Terafab build out. I mean, once again, every time I think these stocks are overextended, which like they probably are when you just look at the charts and the multiples, you look at the long-term picture of growth over the next 5 to 10 years, and you're like, look, these dips will have to get bought because this is where all the money is going. And I think that wasn't as clear to start off 2026. I really think that wasn't. It was clear enough for people to have exposure, but it was not clear enough for people to realize, oh, maybe my fintech exposure is absolutely irrelevant this year, and I need to be buying everything I can think of when it comes to data centers. I'm definitely a victim of that as well. And it's better late than never to try to understand where the capital is going. Now, a full rotation back into the sectors that are dead, to me, would require a break in the narrative, or just those sectors having incredible earnings, which, SoFi had a good earnings and still wasn't able to get that rotation. So it begs the question, what's going to have to break for people to sell their Marvell to buy more SoFi? And right now, I don't know if it's easily a narrative that can take place. Trump is live right now. Let me pull up to him. He's participating in a maternal health care event. Okay, so he's not going to be talking about the economy right here. When he answers questions, maybe we'll see if he's talking more about Iran, but let's pull this up real quick for a second.
Sir, we'll give it to you immediately. Actually, you think Biden could do that? I don't think so. Nor did he try, Bobby, right? They didn't even try. They never tried any. Commonly used at IVF has gone from, as an example, $966 to $168.
Okay, so we're not going to get anything too valuable from that. I will get any clips. I love how as soon as I played it, we had the Biden auto pen thing come up. But yeah, we'll see if Trump says anything that's super relevant right there, and then we'll see if it has to do with the war or the economy. 739.50 as that continues to go green on the S&P right now. 17, thanks for the super chat. Elon pledged money from the court case to charity. Yeah, but that's irrelevant. The point is OpenAI is going to have to pay $134 billion. I don't care where it goes, quite frankly. It goes to charity, goes to Elon, goes to SpaceX. Who cares? The point is, OpenAI is going to lose they just raised $122 billion. You have to give up $134 billion. Like, they obviously don't have the cash for that, so they have to give up a lot of stock, which means whatever nonprofit Elon gives the stock to is going to be in control of a lot of the monetary value of OpenAI. So that is,
probably the reason why Nadella wouldn't be happy about that either. You said he was going to spend it on the chip fab. That was a joke. That was obviously a joke. But theoretically, it could pay for the chip fab. But Elon's going to need $1 trillion at this point if he wants 100 terawatts of compute every year, not every month, every year. So, I mean, if you're going to be wanting that much compute, you're going to need a lot of capex right there. Microsoft still down 1.3% on the day. Ondas has earnings coming up this week, which just flipped green. So does Baba, as they have earnings on Wednesday. Alibaba 137. That's down. Here's a chart I want to show everybody. This goes into the optical DD that I've been doing. This is from that JP Morgan or Goldman Sachs research note. They are expecting the optics market to go from 169 million to 91 billion by 2028. And right now we are in very early innings, which is why Corning and AAOI and Lumentum and Coherent are getting the bid. Now, you might be asking, what are optics, or what does it even mean? Why is it super relevant? And, what is so important about it? And the very simple kind of explanation of this is that, and I have this from ChatGPT, which I think is a really good way to analyze it. For AI infrastructure, modern AI clusters move absolutely massive amounts of data between GPUs. Training a frontier model can involve tens of thousands of GPUs constantly. The network becomes just as important as the chips themselves. The jump that's happening right now in fiber optics versus copper, which is historically what has allowed the communication between these GPUs, are increasingly distributed across many GPUs, which means you have companies like some of the ones that I mentioned that become super, super important. And that's where you have faster optics, co-packaged optics. That's a CPO thing people have been hearing about, silicon photonics, fiber interconnects, advanced switches, etc. All of these things that, quite frankly, have not been super, super relevant. I mean, they've been important in the internet revolution, but they have not been as important in the AI revolution. They are now becoming the center of the AI revolution, similar to memory. And as a result of that, that's why you're getting a lot more people to be excited. What about Nokia then? Yes, Nokia is part of that ecosystem. Nokia right there up 5%. It was down a little bit on the day. And I think the call option flow on Nokia is starting to get a lot of people more excited about how their partnership with NVIDIA continues to be important. Same thing with Arista, even though their earnings weren't the best. And that one fell down. I wonder if someone with like AT&T with a huge fiber optic network catches a bit. I wonder that as well. Verizon on their earnings mentioned that they think they have an opportunity to produce, I think it was like tens of billions of revenue per year in helping set up fiber optics for data centers. Now, is that actually going to happen? Not sure. But Corning is a company that's been doing it for a long time. Corning getting another breakout right there, 204. I mean, this is on the list of names that are probably going higher, even though they're up a lot. And it sucks buying a name that's up a lot, but you also got to see the level of growth these companies are putting up and their importance even more than their growth, which is why there's only, a lot of Corning's competitors are in Japan. There's just not that many American companies. Same thing with Amcor. There's not that many packaging companies. We've all seen how Amcor got completely re-rated from 30 to 70. Circle getting a breakout. Circle also had a massive print on their earnings. There you go, 10% move. They were kind of close to this level before the earnings. Then they fell. Now they're back here. Clarity Act, I think, is also getting the street to be more excited about it. I don't know if we get the Clarity Act this week or this month. The rumors say by the end of May we should be getting it. It would help Bitcoin for sure. Maybe that's why Bitcoin's even holding above 80. But we got to see. Amit, if NVIDIA is so cheap here, would you add a position? So I already have enough NVIDIA, so I don't need to start a position. I think 222 is another all-time high. Yep, there you go. Another all-time high on NVIDIA. But my point is, I just, if you have a 5-year horizon on this, like, I don't think NVIDIA is a crazy buy at 222. I just don't. Because if I think NVIDIA is a crazy buy, then all these other semiconductor names are deeply overvalued. NVIDIA hasn't run as much as the other names because NVIDIA has so many trillions of market cap, it's harder for it to run. But, Burry has $100 puts for January 2027. Like, this thing's going to have to fall a lot for those puts to even get close to being in the money. Like, I mean, I don't know how this is going to play out, but for him to be this bearish on what's happening, I wonder when he comes out and just says, I'm not being bullish, but I'm not being bearish anymore. Or if he continues to double down and just calls bullshit throughout the rest of this rally. Which, forget the rally. I mean, when NVIDIA puts out their earnings, regardless of what the stock does, like to be bearish on that and be bearish on the guidance of continued growth, Intel flipping green, you just have to have a fundamental disconnect with what's happening. Yeah, NVIDIA 4 PE are in the 20s. Tesla's a 4 PE in the 200s right now. It's funny, like Burry's not shorting Tesla, but he's shorting NVIDIA. I'm not saying Tesla's a good short. I'm just saying like one company's growing, one company's not growing, but he's so against this AI. My psychoanalytical opinion of him is he's so obsessed with being right again, like he was in 2008. And 2008 was called a big short for a reason. Everyone was on one side of the trade. He was on the other side. There's not that many times in history where everyone's on one side of the trade and there's an opportunity to be so contrarian that if you're right, you get all of the praise because everyone was so wrong. Outside of what we're seeing right now, like everyone's bullish on AI, which means if you were to have a big short 2.0, you would have to be bearish AI. And I think he's more obsessed with like, being right and proving his legacy versus necessarily looking at the actual data of what's happening right here. Tesla about to flip green. Yardeni says S&P 8,000. We got Yardeni coming up thinking that the S&P can continue to move higher. Now, again, underlying economy, not really in the best situation. We looked at credit last week. We went from 12 billion to 24 billion in the month of March. Delinquencies on autos and credit card loans at an all-time high. That came out this morning. CPI tomorrow, if anyone still cares about it, it's probably going to be ugly because why wouldn't it be? Like oil was up a lot for the past 2 months. But I wonder if people actually are going to deeply, deeply care. Tanner says Michael Burry just bought Melly, so he's back in my good books. JK. Yeah, I mean, look, I think Melly's a decent buy right here, but Burry's, oh, by the way, Burry sold Salesforce. Like he's just all over the place in terms of the buys and the sells. But the thing that he's been the most consistent about is I'm shorting AI. And it's like, okay. I guess like it's just the amount of evidence we have for how important this moment is for our collective species and to just want to take the opposite side of it. Doesn't mean NVIDIA's be a $30 trillion company, but it does mean NVIDIA might not be going back down to 1 trillion like he says anytime soon. Iran is getting a little bit of a pump. Iran trying to recover 52 to 58. Let's see if that can get back up to 60. Amit, if you had a movie made about you, what actor would play you? I mean, this is kind of obvious. This is pretty obvious. The only actor that could play me is obviously Leonardo DiCaprio. Okay. I want the best of the best. I want the absolute best of the best. And it would be Leo. It would have to be Leo. What else can I say? I hope he'd be open to taking the role, but it would have to be Leo. Amitabh Bachchan is crazy, bro. That is so crazy. No, it would have to be Leo. Keanu Reeves. Stop saying Aziz Ansari. That's disrespectful, okay? Stop saying that. That one is disrespectful. I do know who Danny DeVito is, okay? I know it because of Steve, but still. Kosh Patel. That's actually one. Okay, I think Trump's talking about Iran. Let me pull it up. Let's see. Hold on. Let's see what he's saying right here.
In recognition of this ambitious and I have to say it was amazing for the kids. She's the one that got me. I said, look, Dr. Oz and Dr.
For your work. We are here, guys. This is instant fertility treatment.
Never mind. He's not. We'll go back to him when he talks to Ron, but right now he's not. Shah Rukh Khan wouldn't be crazy. Shah Rukh Khan is legit. I wouldn't mind being played by Shah Rukh Khan. Okay, so hold on. We got a couple other headlines. How is it already 11:15, bro? How is the time just passing that quick? Okay, so first of all, I didn't say this, but MicroStrategy bought another 535 Bitcoin today for 43 million. So they bought more Bitcoin. Number two, here's a good article. I know a lot of people are talking about Pure Storage. We had Stock Talk talk about it last week. Jason talked about it. This is an article. I will have a lot more information in the database tomorrow. Someone sent a super chat saying, where's the database? Tomorrow it will be out in the morning. So I'll have a big post on it, explain how to use it, all that stuff, but tomorrow will be out. But that article is a good article to get a little bit deeper into Everpure and understand the storage space on that. And then a few other things we have to bring up right here. NVIDIA losing 222. Tesla, are we going green? It will not be on Substack. It will be a Google Sheet, but I will have a lot of Substack content related to it. So, I mean, it'll be open source for everybody, but there'll be some Substack stuff on it as well. Okay, Tesla getting a breakout right here, 431. As Reuters reports, Jensen was not invited to go to China, but Elon and Tim Cook were. So you're seeing maybe the streak get a little bit. Wow, Visa and MasterCard CEOs are also going to China. Everyone's going to this shit. It's like I was the only one not invited. They could have sent me to Pakistan and I could have got this negotiation over with months ago. Now they're not sending me to China either. So you have Visa, MasterCard, Meta, Cisco, Goldman Sachs, BlackRock, Apple, and then Tesla going to China. Okay. And maybe that's why Tesla, I think, is getting a bit more of a bid. I mean, what do you think about the FOMO of selling all my software and going all into semis and DRAM? Again, this has to be a very individualistic decision right here. I can tell you I'm not selling all my Palantir to go into semiconductor names. But that's also because it's a larger position for me and it's been developed over years. If you bought Palantir at 140 for an earnings move and it's at 134, I actually don't think it's crazy to take the loss and move into something that's in the right sector. But then again, that's buying it at 140, which is way different from buying it at 20, right? And same thing for, SoFi, if you have it at $6-7, that's your average. Like, do you really want to sell it at 16 just to chase something, given, every dollar that it compounds, that cost basis continues to meaningfully give you a higher margin of safety. But I understand the necessity of having that FOMO. So I think you have to taper the expectations of how much do I want to keep? How much do I want to get out? And then the names that I get into, how much do I think the risk reward is skewed more towards reward versus risk? But, no one can really make that decision besides yourself. And if you have a legacy position, it's hard. Like, imagine, we were exactly talking about this on Thursday before Rocket Lab earnings. Imagine selling all your Rocket Lab, which was basically a loser for the year at $70, right? For, I don't know, ASML or Micron, which Micron's done well, but it hasn't gone up 40% since Thursday. I mean, you just missed out on a 40% move on Rocket Lab if you thought it was a loser. And let's say you bought it at 30 or 35, like you have a taxable event and you missed out on probably, based on the shares you have, tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars of gains in 2 days to chase something that was running. So that's the fear I think a lot of people have. Now, Rocket Lab's a unique example because they had such good earnings, but when you chase, it's kind of tough. Unless you just genuinely have lost the thesis, which that is the best reason to chase if you ever do chase, if you lose the thesis on the name that you're getting rid of. ServiceNow right there, 9180. AXTI, another important component of the photonics trade. That one getting up a move of 9%. Is Shopify still down? Shopify, wow, 5% down as Shopify continues to also take a hit. Trump doesn't want a deal on chips. That's why Jensen and AMD and Lisa Su are not going. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think Trump wants the chips to be the negotiating power, and he can't have Jensen there basically, telling the CCP that he's ready to sell them as much as they want when Trump probably needs to negotiate using the chips as bargaining power. I mean, I feel like that's the main reason why Trump did not invite Jensen or Lisa Su here. Elon's still making a little bit of a move with Tesla as that continues to go green. IONQ. Yeah, if the IONQ CEO was going to China, that'd be hilarious. That stock's still up 15% on the day. The other opportunity that will be highlighted in the database as well, super important, rare earths. Rare earths. I mean, the trade hasn't really done that well this year, but we're going to need a lot of them. And the U.S. has invested in a bunch of them. So Intel didn't work for a while before it worked. The rare earths might be another play that potentially gets a shot. Micron's still up 4, but it never regained 18 after touching it today at 818. So this is the dip theoretically. It's about $50 lower. Let's see if throughout the end of the day it spikes back up to 18 or if people are seriously going to be taking some profits right here. I mean, what do you think about Meta? Why does it keep going down? I think Meta and Microsoft are buys, but I think they're buys where you just close your eyes, you buy them, you put them in an account you don't look at, and you literally don't worry about your Meta or Microsoft money having an opportunity cost not being in Micron or SanDisk. I mean, these are what are we talking about? These are the most important companies on planet Earth. There is not a bear case to Meta and Microsoft. You could say there's a reason they're not pumping, but we're not talking about a bear case. These companies have billions of users. They control most parts of the planet. Meta just signed a new deal to put 50,000 meters of cable under the sea to connect countries to optimize their data centers. I mean, these companies are just way, way, way too important. It's called Project Waterworth. 31,000 miles of subsea fiber optic cable networks that are going to be traveling between US, India, Brazil, and South Africa to support growing AI video and data traffic demands. I mean, what are we talking? This is the company that will not be trading at a multi-trillion-dollar market cap? Like, no, there's no way in hell. So, yes, I think they're absolute buys. Obviously, it's got to be with capital that probably stays stuck for a while because it's going to have to stay stuck. But 1,000% these are buys. They're not going to move like a Micron or SanDisk right now. They're just not. But I think that's also okay for the long term. And as Jason, who was at the meetup, and I hope a lot of people here got to meet, there's a bunch of people that are in his Discord that he met for the first time. So it was super cool seeing people meet Jason and see them get acquainted with him. As Jason is asking the right question right here, who makes the cable? And obviously, Meta has a deal with Corning. So, that's part of the reason why Corning is one of those names that's super important. Like the deeper question here is who makes the thing that Meta is using or that Microsoft is using or that Amazon is using. And that is where the capital is going to. So, Jensen investing in Nokia, hard to fade it. Jensen investing in Corning, hard to fade it. Jensen invested in Nebius back in March. Obviously, it worked out. 193. Same thing with CoreWeave. Hopefully, they do that with Iran. But I think the broader story here is not just follow Jensen. It's why is Jensen investing in these companies? He's investing because he needs them to win. He's not just giving them capital so they can give the capital back to him, because then that's not winning. That circular level of money going back and forth eventually collapses on itself. Like, it's not real at the end of the day. It forms a bubble. The reason he's investing in them is because he knows they need the capital to go continue building what they need to build. Because if they can keep building what they need to build, they have more infrastructure to support what we need. And what we need is to keep showing growth because we're a freaking $5.4 trillion company. And we need our supply chain to be legit in order to make this work. This was Jensen a couple months ago talking about this Nokia partnership. Just to give a little bit more context, forget that he's investing in Nokia, even though I think it's bullish, but why he's making all these strategic investments and why this AI cycle continues to be relevant.
World's base stations and this AirScale platform of Nokia is in millions of base stations around the world. If our computers are not inside that base station, it doesn't help. It's no different than NVIDIA's tech computing platforms not inside a car, it doesn't help. And so the first thing is we need a partner to get us into the world's space stations. We also, remember, we're bringing AI to radio networks, AI to RAN, so that we can make wireless tech communications a lot more efficient. Second, we're bringing AI for the radio, meaning on top of these radio networks and these telecommunication network, we're going to be able to provide AI services, which is going to be able to make it easier for us to do robotics and autonomous vehicles and industrial automation and reach all of the different places around the world. That's kind of hard to do with Wi-Fi. Cellular reaches everything. And so we now have this fabric that we can deploy AI computing services on top of it. It's going to be completely revolutionary.
For people that didn't really get it just now in those 40 seconds, I'm gonna put this video right here. Listen to this again. And I listened to there's a full 12-minute interview last night. This is only a minute of that 12-minute. Jensen is saying for us to be relevant in all the things that we need to build, because we have a long trajectory. Jensen's thinking of this as a $20, $30 trillion company. We need partners. We need people to be part of this movement. We need to bring in fact, when he answered my question about the stock being stuck, he said the reason we partner with so many companies is because we need to bring them along for the ride, and they also help us. So I think that's a hell of a reason to invest in Nokia. Now, Nokia has 8% revenue growth. It's not exciting. The revenue growth is 8%. Like, that's not the best. But you can't be investing in it purely on the revenue growth. You have to be investing in it on pulling forward the assumption that growth is going to come, which is obviously been the reason why a lot of these NVIDIA investments have done well and have had worked. But that 40 seconds of him speaking about why Nokia's 6G architecture is going to be way more relevant than Wi-Fi in so many different domains is exactly what he sounded like on Friday when he was talking about the Corning partnership, or in March when he talked about the Nebius partnership, or over the past year when he's been talking about CoreWeave, which has $100 billion in demand that they still cannot fulfill. All of that comes together to recognize that this AI build-out is one of the greatest build-outs that we've ever had. And that's why these companies continue to run. Google down about 1.9% of the day. That one's still getting a little hit, but you can't be too mad. Google was at 350 before the earnings print. NVIDIA losing 222, but still holding 220. I look at NVIDIA as the middle of the food chain. Everyone has to come to it. Yes. And obviously, I think a lot of us have known this for a while, but given we're seeing all these different parts that are starting to move in relationship to NVIDIA is not going to be going to 20, 30 trillion without bringing everyone with them. That's my point. So if you believe NVIDIA is a 10, 20 trillion dollar company, a lot of these smaller companies, even if they look kind of crazy being worth 70, 80 billion, and again, some of them super euphoric, stay away. The ones that are not euphoric, but just have a high multiple, which high multiple doesn't equivocate to euphoria. Euphoria is high multiple with nothing substantial. Lumentum has a lot of things that are substantial, even if the multiple is high, which is why there probably will be pullbacks and there will be dips. But the point is those dips will get bought if the NVIDIA dip inevitably is bought, if the stock market dip is bought, because the stock market right now is AI. And it's just becoming more and more relevant or more and more prevalent that those AI narratives are as relevant as they are. 740 on the S&P. 740 on the S&P. Euphoria is Poet. Yeah, I mean, to an extent, as of now, until we get some substantial news, Poet is probably more euphoric. Now, I don't know about the company that well, so if you understand it super deeply and think there's a fundamental case, then that's a bit different. But Poet is not like Lumentum, even if they're both in optics, right? So yeah, that's a bit more euphoric. Now, that could change. That euphoria can change if the company proves themselves and gets a big deal or an equity stake or something like that. But there are a variety of names that are trading at high multiples that are not euphoric, and that's what's leading to the S&P getting the 740 move. Wow, Tesla's also helping the S&P right there, 435. I think this Elon to China news is seriously the reason it's pumping. For everyone asking why, I do not have an actual headline on Tessie. Cactus, if you see a headline, let me know, but I don't see anything here. Yeah, I see nothing on Tesla. But maybe this China thing is optimistic. Iran says nuclear technology is not on the agenda for U.S. talks. Iran says enrichment is non-negotiable, as per Iranian state media. Trump says Iran's latest peace proposal is very stupid and warned the U.S. could take a much more severe action if needed over the Strait of Hormuz. Let's get back to Trump and see if he's talking about this stuff or if it's... No, it looks like it's more of the paternity stuff that they're talking about. Yeah, he's not taking questions yet, so we're not getting anything on Trump. Is Palantir going to the China meeting? Palantir is not really allowed in China. They've never worked with China, so I would imagine no. I don't think Karp will be heading down there. 436 on Tesla as that keeps moving. I mean, that photo op with Elon, Xi Jinping, and Trump, I feel like that's what the markets are pricing in right now. NVIDIA 222 again, as that's continuing to go green. Okay, I think those were all the main headlines. We'll be back on the close. Got a lot to talk about. Again, we'll have that database out tomorrow. I think it will hopefully be a very, very useful resource for all of us as we try to kind of see what's going on. And there's going to be some parts of it where I'm kind of like designing my own ETF inside of these semiconductor names, and it'll be ever evolving, but it's going to start off with about 10 companies that I like, even at these levels, and that I'd be willing to take a look at, and building some interactive stuff where you can see kind of like how that changes over time, and we'll see if we get rid of certain names or not. But there's just a lot of names that are out there. A lot of even Keel, which fell 5% today. I don't know that much about the company, but dude, like, we're gonna need more compute. And if Keel has any ability to generate the types of megawatts or sign deals with their facilities like a Hut did, Hut was up 30% on Friday. 30% is 30%, whether it's on Keel, whether it's on Tesla, 30% is 30% on your money. And some of these smaller names that are out there, could they be bets together? Now, some of these are obviously lotto bets as well. Fluence Energy up 12%. There could be something fundamental there, but obviously, again, Street might be looking at valuation. But Bloom Energy kind of reminds me of the same situation where Bloom, went from 50 to 300. And yes, there was a pullback last week to 250, but fuel cell technology is super freaking important. And the Street's front running that. They will have 3 sites. Well, if they announce 3 sites with a major hyperscaler soon, or even a contract for a hyperscaler, or like a vendor of a hyperscaler, yeah, Keel's probably going to catch a bid, because we've just seen it too many times in the NeoCloud story. Like, Keel is not Nebius by any sense of the imagination, but it also doesn't need to be, because Nebius is a $40 billion company and Keel is a $2 billion company. Rocket Lab, 119, almost on deck. It's about 20 cents away. It didn't hit it yet. It hit 1896 right now. The White House is inviting. Oh wow, Boeing's also dude. Everyone's invited to this freaking Citigroup is coming. Meta, BlackRock, Blackstone, Goldman Sachs, Citigroup, Apple, Boeing, Tesla, Visa, MasterCard. Trump's bringing the whole U.S. economy to China. Outside of freaking Jensen and Lisa, I guess. What about Sive? I think the Sive thesis is legit. It's just not something you could buy on the American Stock Exchange, right? I think they're trying to get listed on the NASDAQ, and that would probably be a massive catalyst for it. But I kind of want to stick to names that you don't have to go super international to get. I think there's plenty of opportunities still in the States, and those opportunities can still be discussed. You think we'll get BYD cars in America? I mean, maybe that's going to be part of the negotiating that Xi tries to do with Trump to bring BYD here. ARM, by the way, red on the day. ARM pumped to 270, fell to 212. ARM, to me, obviously is a bit overextended, but once again, ARM, Qualcomm, they're likely going to continue to be relevant if the CPU party doesn't stop. Here was Larry Fink a couple days ago, once again speaking about this gold rush around AI.
The United States is short power, we're short compute, we're short chips, and there are going to be shortages in all 3. And memory, 4 things. I actually believe a new asset class will be buying futures of compute. We just don't have enough compute power right now.
Either Larry is full of crap, but he just said people will be buying futures of compute. I mean, this is what I think people need to just including myself when I say people, because it's something that I haven't fully grappled with this year. If we're talking about trading futures of compute, people trade futures of oil because that's a very important commodity. It's a commodity that's going to be around forever, theoretically, and we need it. People trade futures of corn. People trade futures of beef. These are things that have lasted for hundreds of years. When you're talking about futures of compute, I mean, my goodness, it means, yeah, we're pretty compute constrained, and NVIDIA's going up, AMD is going up, and all these smaller players that are coming along for the ride, they're going to have to level up their infrastructure if we're actually that short on compute. Now, do we actually have futures of compute? I don't know. That might be Larry trying to sell a new product to the market with BlackRock's derivative part of the business. But the point is, there's a lot more necessity for compute, which is why these dips are getting bought as easy, and why the market kind of doesn't care about oil prices if this is the bigger story. 119 on Rocket Lab. I will check resistance for 120. But I mean, this is kind of crazy. I don't think I've ever had a stock go up 50% on me in 2 days. Pouncer never did that. Hood never did that. NVIDIA, at least when I bought it, has not done that. Amazon, which has been a good winner for me this year. I mean, 220 average, started buying at 212 in September. It's up. It's just not had the massive moves like some of these other smaller names, but Amazon has not gone up 50% in 2 days in a long time. So this is the first time I think I've ever seen, at least in my experience, a name go up 50%, 34 plus 12 today. So that's what, 46% in 2 days. I mean, that's just absolutely crazy.
120 resistance is 77,000 shares. 77,000 shares. What about OSS? That's fair. I just don't have as much OSS as Rocket Lab. So like, yeah, that's fair. OSS, see, here's the thing. OSS is also a small cap. So the ability for it to move 50%, which is like $100 million, like it's amazing to see it, but it's also not that like crazy because it's a small cap. Like this is kind of why you invest in a small cap, to get those massive exaggerated moves. Rocket Lab's a $50 billion company. Moving that type of market cap in a day is not easy to see. And also I just have a lot more Rocket Lab than I have OSS. So it makes a bigger dent on the port when it makes that type of move. 119.05. Let's see if 120. Wow, Tesla is just not stopping. I guess Trump and Elon 2.0. We're running it back. All right, Trump's taking questions. Let's end out the show today with his questions, and then we'll be done. He's talking about the war right now as well. Let's pull this up.
We're looking at. I think so much. Probably, I think Oz and everybody.
With the generals on Iran, you rejected a deal from Iran over the weekend. Can you tell us anything about that proposal and what, if any, effort will be made to break this deal?
Yeah, it was just unacceptable. A lot of people said, well, does he have a plan? Yeah, of course they do have the best plan ever. I mean, Iran has been defeated militarily, totally. They have a little left. They probably built up during this period of time. We'll knock that out in about a day. But I have a plan. It is a very simple plan. I don't know why you don't say it like it is. Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. They're very dangerous. They're very volatile. It's a terrible thing that's happened over there. They've killed 42,000 people in the last 2 months. 42,000. At least that's what we know of. 42,000 people. They killed numerous people over the last week, but they killed 42,000 people a month and a half ago. They were unarmed protesters, not at all violent protesters. And they started taking them out, shooting them. So we're not going to let them. That's the plan. People say, what's the plan? The plan is very simple. The blockade, first of all, was a part of military genius, just like Venezuela was military genius. We have the greatest military in the world by far. And we're stocked up with great ammunition. We have much better stuff than we did 2 months ago when we first did the attack, which knocked them for a loop. But very simple. Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. Can't have it. And if they did have it, the Middle East would be gone, Israel would be gone, and they'd hit Europe probably next. We're doing the service to the world. And this has gone on for 47 years. Other presidents and leaders of other countries that have the power should have done it, but they didn't do it. But it's a very simple plan. Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon, and they won't have a nuclear weapon, and they didn't want to go that far. If you can believe it, they didn't. How stupid. Are they stupid people? They didn't want to believe it. They think that, well, I'll get tired of this, or I'll get bored, or I'll have some pressure. But there's no pressure. There's no pressure at all. We're going to have a complete victory. We've already, in theory, had a complete victory from the military standpoint. The military, look, their Navy is dead. They had 159 ships. Right now they have 0, other than the little speedboats that go around that got taken out 8 a day by us. They have no Air Force. They have no anti-aircraft. Now, they probably put the shoulder jobs into service over the last 3 weeks, probably. But essentially, they have no anti-aircraft. They have no radar. And frankly, their leaders have been killed at the first level, second level, and half at the third level. And then they come back and they want to negotiate, and they give us
Tesla 440. I think this is Elon going to China and the street feeling like Trump and Elon are friends again, and maybe some work can get done or some deal in China. I mean, there's no headline other than maybe it's a technical breakup, but it seems like Elon going to China is definitely helping out.
It's a stupid proposal, and nobody would take it. Although Obama would have taken it, Biden would have taken it. What they took was far worse. So we stopped him twice. We stopped him when I terminated the worst deal probably ever made in the history of our country in terms of defense. That was the Iran nuclear deal by Barack penned by Barack Hussein Obama that would have given Iran a nuclear weapon within a year. They would have had it years ago. I terminated that in my first term. And then when that beautiful plane right there hit them hard, we really hit them hard. And they told me, I want to just tell you this because they like to say, oh, well, maybe it wasn't that hard a hit. Iran told me very strongly because they intend to give us the nuclear dust, as I call it. It's easier than talking about other terms because it's a term everyone knows. But the nuclear dust, which is what we hit, they told me, number one, you're getting it, but you're going to have to take it out because the site was so obliterated that there's only 1 or 2 countries in the world that could get it. It's so deep and got hit so hard that there's no way they have the equipment to move it. You and China are the only 2 countries in the world that could take it out. So we talked about it, and they said, you'll have to take it out because we don't have the capability of doing it. So for those people that like to say that those great pilots in those great planes, well, we just ordered 22 more of them, new and improved, that those great pilots didn't do their job. They did their job. At 1 o'clock in the morning with no moon, no light, no nothing. Every single bomb hit its targets. And then, as you know, we shot some incredible things. There's things that nobody else has. Nobody has a military like we have. We shot the Tomahawks from a submarine 200 miles away, and that went on top of it. But every one of those, including the Tomahawks, every one of those weapons and shots hit perfectly. And they said to me, just to put it on the record, they said to me, there are only 2 countries in the entire world that could ever get that stuff out of there because we don't have the equipment and nobody else. They said China and the United States. So I just want to let you know, those pilots did an unbelievable job, very dangerous job at 1 o'clock in the morning. Think of it. No moon, no nothing. We had no light purposely. And every single one of those bombs were right down an air chute in a granite mountain that exploded. And they are unable to get it, even if they wanted to. But we're not going to take a chance. So that's part of the deal.
So, sir, you said Iran agreed to allow the removal of all their enriched uranium?
Yeah. Well, they did 2 days ago. They didn't. Okay. They did 2 days ago. They said, you're going to have to take it. We were going to go with them. But they changed their mind because they didn't put it in the paper. So when they sent us this document that we waited 4 days for, that should have taken 10 minutes to do, look, very simple. We get that. They guarantee no nuclear weapons for a very long period of time, and a couple of other minor things, but they just can't get there. So they agree with us, and then they take it back. But they said to us that it was so badly obliterated. It was the word they actually used. That was my original word. Then it got challenged by some of the fake news. And it wasn't challenged with any knowledge. It was just challenged like they were hoping that this wouldn't have been so successful. No, it was obliterated. We have the greatest military in the world. I built it largely in my first term, and I didn't know I'd be using it quite this much in my second term. But very simply, when they say, does he have a plan? Yeah, I have a plan. The plan is very simple. You know, in war, you have to change. You have to be flexible. You have a lot of plans, but you have to do different plans in different days. But I have a great plan. But the plan is they cannot have a nuclear weapon. And they didn't say that in their letter.
Mr. President, the leadership changes that you've talked about in Iran, is this still a leadership that you believe you can negotiate with and ultimately reach a peace deal with?
Well, you have 2. You have the moderates and you have the lunatics. And I think the moderates are more respected. The lunatics want to fight till the end. You know, it'll be a very quick fight. But I call them. You have, just like our country, we have lunatics too. I call them lunatics. I call them stupid people too. But in Iran, they have the moderates that dying to make a deal, and then you have the lunatics, and I guess they're a little bit afraid of the lunatics. But and why not? The level of ferocity for protest. You know, the people are watching it. They want to go out on the streets. They have no weapons. They have no guns. We thought the Kurds were going to give us weapons, but the Kurds disappointed us. The Kurds take. They have a great reputation in Congress. Congress says, oh, they fight so hard. No, they fight hard when they get paid. So I'm very disappointed in the Kurds, but they were given. I said it wasn't going to work. By the way, I guess I have to say it. I disagreed with what they did. They gave it. I said they'll never get.
All right, let's end it there. Kind of the same stuff that Trump has been saying for a while now. Ultimately, we don't know if we're going to get this deal, but it feels like there might be a better shot than not if the nuclear uranium enrichment stuff can be agreed upon. Keel, by the way, up 7% right here. Tesla just making a massive move. NVIDIA just below 222. But at this point in time, we'll tell if this ends up happening. Tesla 440, touched 441, folks. It's got to be China. If not, then it's also Tesla being Tesla, which is when Tesla breaks out, she breaks out. And maybe you're seeing that right here. S&P 500, 730. You got Rock Lab that did not touch 120, but Rock Lab is at 118.33. Not too bad. Nebius 192. Corning 206. Massive mover. Again, I just don't think you fade the NVIDIA partnership right there. That's up 206. AXTI up another 9%. AMD up another 2%. Vertib up another 7%. Coherent 13, Lumentum into the NASDAQ up 14. All of that leading the S&P 500 again to an all-time high. So pretty incredible. Okay, let's end it out right here with word of the day. And then we will be done for now. We got earnings after the bell, ASTS and HIMSS. So we'll talk about that. For those that asking, did I talk about the Chicago meetup? Yes, early in the show, first 5 minutes, we talked about Chicago meetup again. It was awesome, super fun. Parzival, finally got to see him. This guy is in my chat and Tanner's chat all day. Heavy AMD, heavy NVIDIA. So super, super happy I got to see him as well. And it was fun to find. I felt like I knew the guy. Like literally, I felt like I've seen him before. That's how familiar he seemed, even though I've never seen him. But it was super, super awesome seeing him at the meetup and getting to talk to him. Word of the day: parsimonious, extremely unwilling to spend money or use resources. Being parsimonious with risk can help you in the game long enough to compound. It was awesome seeing you, Parzival. It was super great, and thank you for making the trip. Okay, am I saying this the right way? I think I am. Parsimonious. I've got to be saying that the right way. Parsimonious. Let's see.
Parsimonious.
Oh, wow. I got that shit completely right. Parsimonious, baby. I thought I actually might. Wow, I thought I might get it wrong. That was a hard one. Parsimonious. There we go. All right, there we go. That was fun. Dougie, Andy. It was awesome seeing you guys at the meetup. Doug, you guys saw him on the show on Friday, so you guys got to see him on the Market Open. But Andy, again, he's crushing it on eBay, selling his Disney pins. He gave me a couple pins that I'll show you guys later. I said Ryan Cohen might be his new boss, which maybe that's going to happen. But, I mean, just absolutely amazing seeing people from different walks of life crushing it in their own way. He bought the dip heavy in March. ServiceNow and Salesforce not doing that well, but a lot of other stocks are doing well. You know, for people that bought the dip in March, you probably bought some names that are lagging. I think all of us did, but you bought some dips that are also not lagging, like a Rocket Lab right here, or obviously like a Micron or SanDisk. So at the end of the day, if this market continues to be as strong as it is, yes, there will be some names like a Meta, which if you bought the dip on at 520, yeah, you're up, but you're not up as much as you probably should be. But you know, the market continues to show that there is a serious industrial revolution happening right now. And maybe it's not in software at the moment, but eventually it is going to be a lot more exciting than now. Georgiana, she was there. Just so many of you guys in the chat. Saw you at the meetup, and it was super, super fun. So the next meetup is Singapore. Let me just plug that real quick. Next meetup is Singapore, June 27th. I will put the link right here in the chat, and very excited to see people in Singapore, and it should be a fun one. Should be exciting. And, you know, quite frankly, going across the world, it will be my first vacation in probably like 5 years, to be honest. It'll be fun to see some family and have a good time. So, all right, that's it for me. Thank you, everybody. I'll be back on the market close. We got a bunch of earnings. We'll keep going up with everything we've got going on in regards to this Tesla news, Trump, China. I will have that database out tomorrow for everybody. I'll do an explanation for about 10, 20 minutes on how to use it. Has a bunch of different layers to it, but
Ultimately, we got to see if this war gets closer to coming to an end. But even if it doesn't, the market doesn't care about that right now. The market cares about AI. And that's what we seem to see in all these different stock prices. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. I'll see you guys on the market close. Bye, everybody.